This is the launching ceremony of the Initiative for Protection and Strengthening of Territorial Governance of the Territorial Corridor of Peoples in Isolation and Initial Contact and Continuous Forest, Yavari-Tapiche. We are in the Ministry of Culture, and this event begins now with the opening and welcoming remarks from the Minister of Culture. Please, a big round of applause.
Buenos días, hermanos, hermanas, aquí presentes, a quienes nos siguen a través de las redes sociales, a la Manuel Ramírez.
Good morning, brothers, sisters, here today, and also all those who are joining us from different social networks. Mr. Perez Rubio from HSA, our brothers and sisters from Coica, people from Demen, our brothers who come from Brazil, from Naraspa, Sartelín, Sapeyaque, Rivale, Gustavo Zambrano from La Salle, the different institutions that today are joining us and that have joined us through this whole process. Welcome to this city. Welcome to the Minister of Culture. We welcome you from the government of Mr. Castillo Terrones and also from this minister and the Vice Ministry of Interculturality. We want to welcome you. We are here because of an invitation from the Regional Organization from Indigenous Peoples from Loreto for the presentation of this initiative that has to do with anthropological studies regarding the territorial corridor, peoples in isolation and in initial contact, as well as continuous forests. I think it is important not only to recognize but ratify that this Ministry of Culture is a space for you, not just to hear you, but also to speak with you all, and so that from the obligation that we have, and as the from the Vice Ministry of Interculturality, we can work together and we can accompany you and managing the presentation and leading this project. I think that this reality that for sure you will be sharing, it's a fact that should make you react but also comply with our function of guaranteeing collective rights of our originary populations. We want to once again remark this commitment that we've got to hear you, but also to speed up all the different actions that have to do with our ministry and with other ministries, like the ministry, for example, of Internal Affairs, that has to do with the protection of people, that has to do with human rights, so that actions can be carried out in a coordinated, articulated manner, but within due time, not when an emergency has already happened with a situation that cannot be repaired, but within due time. That is regarding our competencies, and that is also what we have been asked to do from the different organizations that have been visiting us and speaking to us. And I think that today this study that it's going to be presented regarding this territorial corridor will be a demonstration of a diagnosis that needs to be known, not only so that it stays there as a document, as a piece of paper, but to implement anything that needs to be done to guarantee life in physical integrity of the human beings, but also the collective protection of the territory. So, from the ministry, we want to welcome you. I also want to excuse myself because I will not be able to be or to stay permanently here. There are a lot of the different institutions here, but I will be coming and going during the free time I've got, because of course, once again, we not only have this commitment, but we are really worried and we really care for what you're going through, and we know that there is a need of urgency here. Thank you for your presence. We are always here willing and open to help you and to carry out with our work. Thank you for your words, my dear Minister. Apu Jorge will give you a summary of the study before you leave. Thank you very much. Big round of applause, please, for this symbolic act of delivering the study
Este es un
to
acto
the
simbólico de la
ministry.
entrega de este importante estudio antropológico que declara fehacientemente la existencia de los Piace en Loreto y Brasil,
This is a symbolic act
respectivamente, a través de
of
un
the
corredor
delivery of
de
this
casi 16
important
millones de
anthropological
hectáreas para
study
proteger la vida, los- de los
that
seres humanos,
declares
hermanos,
the existence
que
of the
viven
Piace
allí,
in
pero también
Loreto
para
and
proteger
Brazil
este
through a
bosque,
corridor
este
of
territorio
almost
para la
16
humanidad.
million
Es
hectares
así como,
to preserve the
hemos
life
dado
of the
inicio
human
ya
beings
a
that
este
live there,
evento
but also
y,
to
acto
preserve,
seguido,
to protect
vamos a dar
this
la
forest
palabra
for
al
humanity.
hermano Jorge
It is
Pérez
then
Rubio,
that
quien
we
es
are
presidente de AIDESEP, para presentar
starting
la
with this event,
iniciativa de
and
protección y
next
gobernanza
we will
territorial
give
del
the floor
corredor,
to our brother
respectivamente, a
Jorge
quien le
Pérez
recibimos con un
Rubio,
fuerte aplauso.
president from IDESEP, to present the initiative of the corridor. And we
Bien,
welcome him
hermanos
with
y
a big
hermanas,
round of
Muy
applause.
buenos días a todos, a los funcionarios del Ministerio de Cultura,
Well, brothers,
a los
sisters,
hermanos indígenas
good
del
morning
Brasil,
with you
las
all,
organizaciones.
to the public officials from the Ministry of Culture,
Hemos estado en varias reuniones mediante
the
el cual en forma
indigenous,
conjunta se ha
our
construido
indigenous brothers from
estudio.
Brazil, from the different organizations of the
Saludar a los
Yavari Valley.
hermanos
We have been
dirigentes
in many
de
meetings,
ORPIO, de ORAU,
and together with them we have built
al equipo
this
técnico y a
study
todos los hermanos y líderes invitados
to
que
welcome
están aquí.
all the leaders from ORPIO, ORAU,
Muchas gracias por
to the
estar
technical
aquí.
team, and all the brothers and
Bueno, la
leaders
ministra se fue,
whom are
pero quedó
guests
su
here
lugarteniente,
today,
¿no?
some journalists.
Margarita Guamán, que también nos ha
Thank you
acompañado mucho en
for
estos
being here.
viajes. Hemos estado por el
Well,
por
the
el
minister
Yavari,
had
no,
to
por el
leave,
Yavari,
but
¿no?
she left. Margarita
Sí,
Waman,
hemos estado en
she
la
has
frontera con
also
Brasil.
joined us in many
4
trips.
días
We have
dando los
traveled
hermanos acceso. Y sabe
around
y
Javari.
conoce
Yes,
desde el lugar de los
we have
hechos
been in
la
the border
problemática,
of
las amenazas,
Brazil for about 4
necesidad de proteger
days, visiting the
esta
Macés brothers,
extensión de
and she
territorio
knows
que está en
from
16 millones.
the actual location
básicamente voy a
in
hacer
situ,
una
the need
pincelada muy
to
grande
protect
respecto
this
a qué
this
significa para nosotros
extension
los pueblos
of territory,
indígenas
which is in
este
16 million.
corredor territorial.
I am going to be
Este
talking
estudio empezó hace
quite
muchos años.
briefly of
Y ha
what
estado
it
orientado
means for
básicamente
us as indigenous
a poner
people,
de
this
manifiesto
territorial corridor,
las
Yavari-Tapiche. This study started many years
amenazas,
ago, and it was
la
orientated
cultura de los
towards
pueblos indígenas circundantes, la
the fact of
existencia de
wanting
los
to
Piace,
put
de los pueblos
into
indígenas
manifest
en
the
el
capacities, the
secundario en
threats,
esta parte del país.
the culture
¿no?
of the
Entonces,
surrounding indigenous
Con eso quiero decir que la
population, the
existencia de estos
existence of
pueblos
the Piasi, the indigenous
vuelve
population in
real.
voluntary isolation
¿no?
in this part of the
Es real la
country.
existencia de estos
And with
pueblos
that,
porque
I want to
todos
say that the
estamos
existence
documentados.
of this population is
Quisiera
real,
que nos
becomes
ayudaran,
real.
después será mi deber
It's,
para poder
they do exist,
sacar algunas fotos.
and it is now documented. I would love to have a book here,
Gracias, Sharon.
but maybe later you can
Entonces,
give me a book
Este
so that I
estudio
can check
contiene
some pictures.
evidencias que se ha recogido en el lugar de los hechos,
Thank you, Shada.
respetando el derecho de no contagio,
So, this study contains
con,
evidence
estrategias,
that have been gathered
con
in situ,
protocolos
respecting the right
antropológicos
of no
infalibles
contact,
que dan cuenta de la existencia de los aislados.
with strategies,
Y esto lo puede-
with protocols,
Se ha documentado.
anthropological
Se pueden ver fotografías,
protocols
se pueden ver
that
indicios, se pueden ver
take account
testimonios.
of the existence
Hermanos
of this population. And it's been
tener,
documented in this study. You can see some pictures.
Han podido ver
You can actually
de
see
una manera,
testimony of
inexorable
the
la
brothers
presencia
that
de los
have been
aislados, ¿no? En el corredor.
able to
La
see
importancia de proteger este corredor, en primer lugar,
the
la protección de los
presence
derechos de
of
los
the
hermanos
isolated
indígenas
population.
Los
The
derechos
importance of
de esos
protecting
hermanos
this
que no
corridor
pueden comunicarse con nosotros
first
y con la sociedad
is
nacional e
the
internacional
importance
para
of the
decirnos
protection
que
of
están
the
en peligro
rights of
por todos
our
los
brothers
planos,
and sisters, those
¿no?
who cannot communicate with us,
los peligros
nor
más grandes
with
como el
the
narcotráfico,
society, national or
la trata
international, to
ilegal,
tell us that they are
la
in
minería
danger from
aurífera,
everywhere.
la caza misma no descontrolada,
The biggest threats like drug
las
trafficking,
actividades petroleras que han
lodging,
estado en su momento, pero
mining,
el lote
gold
existe,
mining,
solamente los
hunting,
operadores han tenido que
uncontrolled
retirar,
hunting,
abandonar el lote por insistencia de los
oil
hermanos
activities that at some point in time were there, but the
actividades
lot
extractivas en
exists.
ese lugar.
The operators have had
Había
to
el exterminio total
leave
de estos hermanos.
because of the insistence of the Yavari brothers to tell them that they cannot
Entonces,
carry out
ese es por el lado
any
de los derechos humanos, de
extractive
los derechos de proteger o por la necesidad
activities
de proteger.
because they could put in danger their lives,
Tienen
right?
esa responsabilidad de
So
ser en el
that
país, el
is
Ministerio de Cultura.
about human rights,
Hay un marco
the
legal
need to protect
que le
our
dice al
brothers.
Ministerio de Cultura que tiene que
And
proteger
who
a
has
estos
got
hermanos
this responsibility?
de una manera,
In our country, the Ministry
de
of
forma
Culture.
prioritaria.
There is a legal framework around it that
aquí,
tells
pues,
the Ministry of Culture,
hay que
that
hacernos
tells
un
them that
poco
they need to
de mea
protect
culpa. No
our brothers
se avanzó.
in a way, in a
No se
prioritary
avanzó como
manner.
debe ser. Pero estamos a tiempo
And
todavía
here we have to
de que el Ministerio de
to,
Cultura, en coordinación con los
to
pueblos
say
indígenas,
to push for it. You know, there is a mea culpa that
desarrollar
needs
un
to be
sistema de
done.
control.
We are, however, in time.
Y esa forma de control ya
In
está
coordinate, that the
solo
Ministry of
que hay que
Culture,
darle
in
vida,
coordination
con
with
financiamiento,
the indigenous
con
population
logística,
around, to
con
develop a
coordinación con las
control
comunidades, de tal manera que se
system
vuelva sostenible,
before
arraigado
these
en la comunidad.
threats. They're actually already there.
también
They exist, but we
Es
have
bueno de
to
respondernos
make
la
them
pregunta, ¿quiénes son los
work
aislados?
so that
¿No? En
it,
este
it
documento
becomes part of the
nos
society.
menciona que son los descendientes, ¿no? De los hermanos
And
ancestros
also,
que están aquí.
it is good to answer ourselves,
han
to answer to
decidido
these
un
questions.
grupo,
Who are the isolated? They are the
estar con
descendants of
¿no?
our
Establecerse
Maxes
en
brothers who are
comunidades,
here.
Y por otro lado,
The
de
children.
quedarse en el bosque como vivían hace
And some of them
más de
have
50 años atrás.
decided, a group of them, to be
Disfrutando
here, to
de
establish
manera
as
itinerante los recursos que
communities.
les da,
And on the other
los
hand,
recursos que les proporciona.
some of them to stay in the forest
No
as they
solamente
used to
alimentos, sino
more
de
than
fortalecer
50
la
years ago,
espiritualidad.
enjoying
Como le comentaba
in an
Adam
itinerary
Bauer,
manner
la
what
capacidad que
the
tienen los
forest
aislados
give them.
de mimetizarse en el bosque.
Not only food, but also to strengthen the
¿Y cuántos
spirituality.
otros conocimientos
I
avanzados,
was
como por ejemplo,
telling Adam
no se
Bauer
puede
the
ver hasta ahora
capability
que
that the isolation population have
cuál
got
es el
to
escudo frente a
become
distintas
part of the
enfermedades.
forest, and the knowledge that they've
Entonces,
got.
hay
We don't really know what they
conocimientos muy
do with their
avanzados
dead,
que con proteger
and
este
what
territorio
is
también
the
se va a
shield
proteger el
before
conocimiento,
certain
se va a proteger la
illnesses.
vida de estos hermanos.
So
por otro
knowledge
lado,
exists, and by protecting
tema
this
del bosque
territory,
son
we will be
16 millones de
protecting that
hectáreas.
knowledge, and we
Perú
will
se
be protecting the
comprometió
life of our brothers.
ante
And on the other hand,
la plataforma para
this
luchar
issue
contra
that
el
has to
cambio
do with the
climático.
forest, more than 16 million
Hasta
hectares,
el 2030
Peru
debemos de reducir
had a
el 30%
commitment
de
that they
la
made
deforestación,
before
¿no?
the
Y este es uno de
platform
los, ¿no? que están
to fight
dentro,
against climate
¿no?
change.
del
Up
esquema
until
de las
2030,
NDCs,
we need to reduce
de las contribuciones
30%
netas
of
determinadas,
deforestation.
porque ese es el aporte
And
que nosotros
this
podemos hacer,
It's one of those things that
garantizando,
are
¿no?
within
la protección
the
de
scheme
los 16
of
millones.
the SDGs.
Es muy
Because
importante mencionar
that is what we can
que
give,
no va a poder,
guaranteeing
no puede
the
haber una protección
protection
efectiva de
of the
estos
16
hermanos
million
aislados
hectares.
si no fortalecemos, si no
It
empoderamos
is very
a
important
las
to
comunidades
mention
colindantes, ¿no? Los
that
hermanos del Tapiche, del
there
Tapiche
cannot be
blanco,
an effective
del Tapiche
protection of
colindae,
our isolated
¿no?
brothers
La
if we
comunidad
don't
nativa
strengthen, if
Maxés
we
y sus
don't
14
empower
anexos,
the surrounding
los hermanos
communities.
del Brasil.
Our brothers from
Estas
Tapiche,
comunidades
from
tienen que estar
White
muy
Tapiche,
bien
Tapiche Blanco,
informadas,
the
muy
native
bien
community of
organizadas,
Maisés and the 14 annexes the brothers,
tienen que
our brothers
tener
from Brazil.
la atención de
These
los servicios
communities
básicos
need to
adecuados,
be very
educación,
well
salud,
informed, very well
emprendimientos que les
organized.
permita tener una economía sana,
They
actividades
have
sanas,
to have the attention,
impida caer en la garra
basic
del
services,
narcotráfico y que crece
education,
de manera
health, entrepreneurship, so they can have a healthy
y eso a la vez
economy,
significa para
healthy
nosotros un grave
activities
peligro en el concepto
that
de
can
los
stop
defensores
them from
del
maybe
territorio
falling
que están siendo asesinados.
into the hands of the drug traffickers. And at the same
Entonces,
time, that represents
hay
a
varios
big
colaterales que
danger
podemos
in the
evitar,
concept of
pero
the
tenemos que tener
advocates
con
that
claridad
keep being
qué cosa tenemos
killed
que hacer.
around the
lo
area.
tenemos claro.
So there are many collaterals that can be
Solo
avoided
que
here, but
que
we have
avanzar
to
con
understand quite clearly what
con
needs to be done.
rapidez,
And
pero también con
we are
recursos
clear.
y decisiones
It's just
políticas de parte del Estado.
We have to move forward
Entonces, hemos venido
quite
aquí
fast, but also with
como
resources
ORPIO,
and
cuando era
political
yo
decisions
presidente, ahí hemos
from the
impulsado
government's part.
fuertemente. Ahora estoy en la presidencia de AIDESEP igual.
We are here
¿no?
today.
Nuestras agendas de las regiones
We have
son
come
las
as
agendas de
ORPIO.
AIDESEP.
I used to be the president
apoyando
of
y trabajando
ORPIO.
fuertemente
Now I
en ese
am in the
sentido.
presidency
Muchas
of
gracias.
ISEP. We continue
Muchas
moving
gracias a
forward.
todos.
The agendas of the region are the agendas
Apu
of
Jorge Pérez Rubio
ISEP.
de,
We
la
will
Asociación
continue
Interétnica de
supporting
Desarrollo de
and
la
working
Selva
quite
Peruana,
strongly
presidente, ¿no?
around this. Thank
Él
you
ha hecho
very
un
much.
resumen específico de lo que
Thank
venimos a
you,
presentar
Apu
y quisiera
Jorge
recordarles que esta
Pérez
iniciativa de
Pérez
protección del
Rubio
corredor está
from
respaldada por la legislación
the
peruana,
Association
brasileña
of the
y los
Peruvian
instrumentos
Forest.
internacionales
He has
que
done a
garantizan los
summary of
derechos de
what
los
we're
pueblos indígenas.
here to
En el
present.
Perú,
This initiative of the protection of
la
the corridor,
existencia de
it
una
is backed
ley,
up by
número
Peruvian,
28736,
Brazilian, and international
garantiza, pues,
legislation
a través
that
de una
guarantee the
regulación
lives of these
legal,
people. In Peru,
la
specifically,
defensa,
the
la protección
existence
de los
of a
pueblos
law,
indígenas en aislamiento y
number
contacto inicial.
2736,
Acto
guarantees
seguido,
around
vamos
a
presentar
legal
en esta
regulation
parte,
that defend
del programa,
the defense, the
la
protection
propuesta
of
los
those
resultados del estudio
brothers and sisters
antropológico y ambiental.
and those
para
territories and the people
un poco
in
ir
isolation
entendiendo,
and initial contact. So
en
now
detalle
we
de
are
qué trata esta
going to
propuesta
talk
y por
about
qué
the
nosotros
results
reconocemos
of the
que
anthropological
esta
and
propuesta
environmental
es la prueba
piece
fehaciente
of
de la
the
existencia de los
studies,
PIACI
so that we
y
can
la forma de
understand
cómo
in
debemos
detail
protegerlo.
what is this
Desde
about and
no
why
solamente
do
las
we
comunidades y
recognize that this
organizaciones, sino
proposal
también desde el mismo
is
Estado y su estructura.
the proof of the
Entonces, para
existence
esto,
of the
vamos
PIACI
a-
and the
a
way in
ceder
which
la
we have to
palabra
protect them, not
al
from the
ingeniero
different
David
communities
Freitas
and
y al
organizations,
equipo
but
técnico en
from
general, ¿no?
the
de Cris
actual
Huertas,
national
Hilton
government or
Nascimento,
state
Adam Bauer
and
y
its
Whitman
structure.
Sánchez.
So we
Un
will
fuerte
give the
aplauso para
floor
ellos
now
también,
to
que van a presentar
engineer
la propuesta.
David Freitas and the technical team, Beatriz Huertas, Hilton Nascimento, and Whitman Sanchez. A big round of applause, please. They will be introducing the proposal.
Bien, buenos días a todos.
Welcome.
En esta oportunidad
Good morning to you
tan
all.
grande para
In
los
this
pueblos
opportunity,
indígenas,
so important for the
queremos
indigenous
presentar
population,
este estudio
we want to
que nos ha
present
llevado mucho tiempo
this
para
study
desarrollarlo.
that has taken
Eh,
us a long
En primer
time
lugar,
to
quiero
develop.
destacar que esto
First
es
of
una
all, I'd like to
iniciativa de
mention
los pueblos
that
indígenas.
this is an initiative
Es una
from
iniciativa
the
de las
indigenous
organizaciones
people.
indígenas
It is an
de este
initiative
lugar
from the
que
different
vamos a
indigenous
presentar.
organizations from
Eh,
this area.
El corredor territorial se encuentra
The territorial
en la
corridor
frontera
is found
entre Perú y Brasil.
in the border
Eh,
between
es una
Brazil
gran
and
extensión de
Peru.
bosques donde
It is a
habitan
large
pueblos en
extension of
aislamiento,
forests
quizás
where
uno de los lugares
peoples in
pocos
isolation
en el mundo.
live, possibly
Está la mayor
one of the
cantidad
very
de
few
pueblos
places in the
aislamientos
world where this
que hay en el
happens.
mundo.
Here you can find
Si
the
ustedes pueden ver
biggest
en el
number
mapa,
of
hay un color rojo
peoples in isolation.
es
If
el
you look
perímetro
into the map,
del
you can
corredor.
see this red
Entonces, el
line
color
that shows the
azul que está
perimeter of the
dividiendo
corridor. The
este
blue
polígono rojo es la
line that is
frontera entre
dividing
Perú y
this
Brasil.
red polygon is the actual border
Y como
between Peru and
venía
Brazil.
ya diciendo,
And
este corredor es
since they were already
una gran
saying this corridor
un poco más de
is
16
a
millones de
large
hectáreas,
area, a little bit more
de
than
los cuales
16 million
5
hectares,
en Perú y 11 en
from
Brasil.
which 5 are in Peru, 11 found in Brazil.
Quiero hablar de dos cosas. Uno es la
I want to speak
iniciativa
about
y
two
otro
things.
es el estudio.
One is the
La
initiative, and
iniciativa
the other one is the
para
study.
proteger
The
esta zona
initiative to
surgió de las
protect this
organizaciones
area
indígenas
arose
encabezadas
from
por
the
ORPIO.
indigenous
año 2014.
organizations led by
O sea,
ORPIO
más o menos
in
hace
the
7
year
años.
2014.
Es la iniciativa,
So
surgió
about
la
7
idea,
years ago.
Con
That was the
informaciones de las
initiative, the
bases, entonces
idea
decimos,
with
hay pueblos
information
aislados,
from
y hay que
the people.
protegerlos.
So we said, okay, there are
¿Qué
peoples in
buscamos
isolation
con
and we
esta
have to protect
iniciativa?
them. And what were we looking for with
Primeramente,
this
la
initiative?
protección y el
First of all,
reconocimiento
the
de los
protection
derechos de los pueblos
and
en
recognition
aislamiento
of the
y en
rights
contacto inicial.
of the population in isolation
También buscamos
and in initial
proteger los territorios
contact.
de las comunidades
We're
indígenas que ya no están en
also
aislamiento,
looking
pero que
into
conviven
protecting the community, indigenous
cercanos a los
population
pueblos
that, although
en
not
aislamiento.
in isolation, live close by, very
También,
close to those
como
in
dijo antes,
isolation.
El que me antecedió en la palabra, buscamos que las
Also,
comunidades
as
que están
it was mentioned before,
cercanas
we're
o en el
looking for
interior de este corredor
for those
tengan
communities whom are within this
mejor
corridor
bienestar,
can have
tengan,
a
condiciones
better
de vida
life,
mejores, y que
better
todo el
living
mundo pueda
conditions,
poner las
and that
empeños para apoyar
anybody
el desarrollo de estas
can
comunidades. Porque si ellos están bien,
look
los aislados
into
también
helping them,
van a estar
supporting
bien
them, because
protegidos.
if they are okay, peoples
Y
in
por
isolation
último,
will
con
also
esta iniciativa
be okay.
buscamos
And with this
acuerdos
initiative,
con el
we were
Estado
we
para
were
la
looking
protección de esta área.
into
Buscamos
having
que el
agreements
Estado tome
with the
decisiones
government
para proteger esta área.
for the protection
También
of
del
this
Estado
area, so that the
peruano.
government,
También
the national
buscamos el
government
apoyo
could make
de
certain
organizaciones
decisions.
cooperantes
could-
que nos ayuden
And we are also looking the
para
support of
procurar
other
el bienestar
organizations that
de
can
las
help us,
comunidades que
and so
habitan
that
este corredor.
we can continue having the support and well-being
Eh,
of
La
these
iniciativa fue acogida
organizations.
y está
The
apoyada
initiative
por 4
was very much welcome, and it was
organizaciones
supported
indígenas
by
regionales
4
y 21
regional
organizaciones
indigenous
locales.
organizations
Las
and
organizaciones
21
regionales son
local
ORPIO,
organizations.
ORAU,
The organizations
UNIVAJA,
are ORPIO, ORAU,
ORPIO.
UNIVAJA,
Entonces,
and
con sus respectivas
ORTIN,
bases, y
with their
tenemos
respective
el apoyo
organizations, and we have
organizaciones
also the
aliadas como son
support
Rainforest,
from
CTI
allies,
y CTI.
other organizations like Rainforest, CTI, and CPI.
Esa es la iniciativa. Entonces, para
That
eh,
is the initiative.
contribuir con esta
So,
iniciativa, para
To
reforzar esta
contribute
iniciativa,
with this
para dar a
initiative, to
conocer
reinforce
esta
this initiative,
se
to
hizo un estudio.
let everybody know about this initiative, we carried out this study.
En 2016,
This study started in
empezó a realizar
2016. In
el estudio
2016,
para demostrar la existencia
we
de este corredor.
started with a study to demonstrate the existence of this corridor.
Entonces, en este estudio, primeramente,
So, in this
se
study,
muestran muchas
first
cosas.
of
Se
all,
muestra las presiones y amenazas,
we can show many
se
things.
muestran los
The
actores que
pressure, the
intervienen en
threats,
este corredor.
and also the actors that intervene in this corridor.
Habiendo
Also,
tenido el apoyo de ORAU, ORPIO,
having had the support of
se
ORAU,
realizó esta
ORPIO,
propuesta con
we carried
este
out this
estudio
proposal
con
with
levantamientos de campo,
this study
con trabajo de campo en casi todas las cuencas para
by
levantar información
working
sobre
on the
presencia de
field in
aislados,
almost all
sobre
the
el número de
watershed,
comunidades que
so
están
that we can find if there, we can find out
en esto
of
consistió
the
estos
existence of these
6
people, the
años
different actors.
que ahora
This
estamos
is what we
ya
did for 6
culminando con la
years.
presentación de este libro.
That we are now study that we are now ending with the presentation of this book.
Rainforest Foundation of Norway apoyó a ORPIO
Rainforest
para realizar
Foundation
este
Norway supported ORPIO to carry out this study.
También durante el
At the
estudio se
same time,
recabaron muchas evidencias sobre la
during the
presencia
study,
de
we
aislados
gathered a
en
lot of
toda la
evidence
zona. Y
regarding
estos estudios
the presence of those in isolation in many places, and those studies
para
were
apoyar los
delivered
estudios que
to the
ellos
Minister
también
of
vienen
Culture
haciendo para
to support the
que la
studies that they've
creación de
also
reservas
been
indígenas.
doing
Se ha entregado
for the creation
una
of
gran cantidad
indigenous
de estudios
reservations.
realizados por ORPIO.
We have delivered many studies carried out by ORPIO.
El estudio consta, como ustedes ya
The study,
van a tener un libro, consta de 7 partes.
as you well know,
Las 7 partes.
has got 7
El
parts.
primero están los objetivos,
Those
la
7
ubicación
parts,
del
we have
corredor,
the objectives,
los aspectos
the location of the
socioculturales,
corridor,
las categorías
social and
legales
cultural
superpuestas,
aspects, the
las
legal
presiones y
categories,
amenazas, que es un capítulo muy importante,
the threats,
los actores que intervienen, las conclusiones y
the actors that
recomendaciones.
intervene,
A través de la
the
reunión,
conclusions
a través del
and
desarrollo de esta
recommendations.
reunión, el equipo técnico
Through the
irá
meeting,
presentando en
through
forma más detallada cada uno
these
de
meetings,
estas partes que
each
corresponden.
one of the members
Hasta
will
aquí,
start talking about the
muchas
different
gracias por su
parts
atención.
of the study. Thank you very much for your attention.
La siguiente ponente es la antropóloga Beatriz Huertas, que nos va a dar también algunos alcances.
Presenter
Invitamos
is
aquí a la
anthropologist
mesa, en
Beatriz
todo caso al
Huertas.
podio, para que pueda explicarnos y darnos más
We,
detalles del estudio. Un fuerte aplauso para ella, por favor.
We're asking her to come to the podium so that she can give us her
¿Qué tal?
presentation.
Buenos días, tengan todos ustedes.
Hello,
voy a
good
exponer
morning.
sobre,
Good morning to you.
la parte sociocultural
I will be
del
presenting
estudio. Siguiente,
on
por favor.
the social and cultural
Siguiente.
piece of the study. Next slide, please.
Ahí, gracias.
Next.
Bueno, el corredor territorial
Thank you.
Yavari-Tapiche
So
está
the
conformado
territorial
por
corridor
territorios
called
continuos y
Yavari-Tapiche
transfronterizos de pueblos indígenas
has
en
got
aislamiento,
continuous
contacto
and
inicial, y también
cross-border
pueblos organizados
territory.
en comunidades y aldeas que comparten
has
territorios con estos pueblos.
peoples
¿no?
in isolation and
con
also
relación a los
communities
pueblos en
that share the land with
A lo
these
largo del
people.
tiempo,
Regarding
desde
the
los años 90,
population
las
in
organizaciones
isolation,
indígenas han
through
solicitado al
time,
Estado
since the
el
90s,
reconocimiento
indigenous
de los derechos
associations
fundamentales de los
have
pueblos en
requested
aislamiento.
from the
Estas
government the
solicitudes
recognition
han estado
of the fundamental
acompañadas de
rights
estudios
of these
con los
populations
cuales
in
se ha buscado
isolation.
demostrar
They
su
have been
existencia y a partir de
joined
allí
with
delimitar
studies
y
that can
lograr
prove the
el
existence
reconocimiento oficial de
of these
sus
people
territorios.
to then try
Estos
and
estudios han sido
delimit
realizados a lo largo del
their
tiempo
official
y
territory.
como
These
resultado,
studies
el
have been
Ministerio de
done through
Cultura
time,
ha llevado
and
a cabo
as a
también
result,
procesos,
the Ministry of
de
Culture
estudios,
has also taken
y como resultado de todo esto tenemos
have
lo
carried out
siguiente.
some studies, and as a
En la
result
parte
of it all,
occidental del
we
corredor,
have the following.
correspondiente a Perú,
In the
existen
western
pueblos
area of the
indígenas
corridor
en
corresponding
aislamiento
to
de habla
the Peruvian
pano.
territory, we have indigenous
norte,
populations in,
la parte
in
norte,
isolation,
están los,
which
llamados
speak Pano.
septentrionales.
In the
Este es un
northern
subgrupo de
area,
la
you
familia
have the
lingüística Pano,
northern
que
Pano,
comprende
which is
a
a
los
subgroup
Mercés,
of the
Colubo,
linguistic
Culina
Pano
Pano,
group,
una serie de
which
pueblos
includes
indígenas.
the Culino, Culina
Luego,
Power, and a
hacia
series
la
of
parte sur
indigenous
del
populations.
corredor, en el lado peruano,
Towards the
están,
southern
los
area
Pano
of the corridor, in the
medianeros.
Peruvian side,
Es un
once
subgrupo
again,
también
we
de la
have
familia lingüística
the
Pano, que
median
comprende
Pano.
a
It's a
diferentes
subgroup of the
pueblos que han sido
linguistic
llamados
Pano
Isconagua,
group,
Capanagua,
which includes
Huyanagua,
different
Yini, ¿no?
Groups of
Estos
populations
pueblos en
called
la parte
Kanawa,
sur son
Ukini.
transfronterizos, se
These
desplazan
populations in
por
the
ambos lados
southern
de la
area
frontera entre
are
Perú y Brasil.
cross-border
Además, es muy
population.
probable la existencia de miembros
They
de
go from
otras
Peru
familias
to Brazil,
lingüísticas, ¿no?
back and forth. And of course,
Acá en este cuadro ustedes pueden ver,
there
¿no?
is
Este
the existence,
reconocimiento
for
de estos
sure,
pueblos
of
se ha
of
dado
some
en
other
4 áreas,
linguistic
que son
groups. The
las áreas
recognition
donde las
of this
organizaciones
population
indígenas han solicitado la creación de reservas
has been
indígenas
done
para
in
pueblos
4
en
areas.
aislamiento.
In the ones that the
Yavarí,
indigenous
¿no? Yavari
populations
Tapiche, Sierra
have
Divisora Occidental e
asked
Isconagua, ¿no?
the government to create
En el
different
lado
reservations.
brasileño,
Yavari
el
Tapiche,
Estado
Jurivin.
brasileño,
In the Brazilian
cuenta
side,
con 17
the Brazilian
referencias
state
de presencia
counts
de
with
pueblos indígenas en
17
aislamiento. Estos
references
se encuentran
of
en la tierra
presence of
indígena Valle del
indigenous
Yavarí,
populations in
que
isolation
comprende los
in the
afluentes derechos del
Javari,
río Amazonas
Javari
y hacia
Valley.
el sur en
It
la cuenca del
includes
río Yuruá.
the tributaries of the
Esta
Amazon and
es,
towards the south
una,
in the headwaters of the
concentración muy
Yoruba
grande,
River.
numerosa de pueblos
This
de
is
referencias,
a
de presencia
very
de pueblos
large
indígenas
and
en
numerous
aislamiento para una
concentration
sola área,
of
para una sola
reference
tierra
of the
indígena, ¿no?
existence of this
Entonces,
type of population
tenemos
for
un número
one single land, one
significativo de
single
pueblos
area.
indígenas en aislamiento.
So we
Como
have a
ustedes pueden
significant
ver, la
number
presencia de
of
estos
populations in
pueblos,
isolation.
¿no? A lo
As you
largo y
can
ancho del
see,
corredor,
here is
desde
the
el bajo,
presence
los
of these
afluentes del Bajo Amazonas, ¿no?
population
hasta el Alto Tamaya y desde las cabeceras de los
in every
afluentes
single
derechos
area
del río Ucayali hasta, ¿no? toda esta zona
close to the
de
headwaters of the
Implica
Ucayali
que
River
probablemente
towards
estemos
this area of the
hablando de
Yoruba.
una de las,
This
mayores
implies that
extensiones
more
de
than likely
territorios
we are
contiguos de
speaking
pueblos
about
indígenas en
one
aislamiento
of the
del
largest
mundo.
extensions,
Siguiente, por favor.
continuous territory rather,
Estas son
of
malopas de
population in
pueblos
isolation
tomadas desde
in
el aire,
the
¿no?
world.
En el lado izquierdo se presentan
We have
malopas
some
en el lado peruano del
shots
corredor.
from
y,
aerial
estas
shots.
malopas, ¿no?
You can see
Del
the
lado-
Peruvian
del lado
side of
izquierdo
the
son las
corridor,
de,
and you have the
Brasil.
Moluccas here.
Siguiente, por favor.
These are the ones that are from
El
the
corredor también
Brazilian
está
side.
habitado por pueblos indígenas en contacto inicial o en
The
contacto
corridor
reciente,
is
que
also
son
populated
considerados
by
pueblos
indigenous
altamente
populations
vulnerables,
in
al igual que los pueblos
initial
en aislamiento.
contact
En
or
Perú
early
tenemos los
contact,
Isconagua,
quite
¿no?
vulnerable as well,
Pueblo de habla pano,
same
que
as
fueron
the
contactados en el
ones
año
in
59
isolation.
por
We have
misioneros,
a population
habitan la
from
región
the
sur,
Pano
la parte del río
language
Callería,
contacted
y
by missionary.
en
They
Brasil tenemos
inhabited the
los Corubo
southern
y los
area,
Chojón
and
de
in
Apá.
Brazil
Los Corubos
we
son de
have
habla
the
pano,
Corubo
los
and
Chojón de
the
Apá son de
Shohondapa.
habla
The
catuquina.
Corubo
Siguiente, por favor.
speak Pano, and the
Y,
other ones
como decíamos, el
speak
corredor también está
Catuquino.
habitado por pueblos indígenas organizados
As
en
we
comunidades
have already
y
mentioned, the
aldeas que
corridor is
comparten
also
territorios con los
inhabited by
pueblos en
indigenous
aislamiento.
population organized in
Tenemos
communities
14 pueblos indígenas,
and hamlets.
¿no?
We
habitando
have
el
about
corredor,
14
organizados de esta
indigenous
manera,
populations
de la familia Pano,
living
Motés,
along the
Matiz,
corridor,
Marubo,
organized in
Colina
this
Pano,
manner from the
Capanagua,
Pano group,
Mupini,
Motif
Nahua,
Marubo,
Shipibo,
Colina
Conibo,
Pano,
de
Otanawa,
la familia
Ripini,
lingüística
Nahua,
Catuquina,
Shipibo,
los
Conibo.
Canamarí, de la familia
From
lingüística
the
Pebayagua,
Catuquina
Yagua,
linguistic
de la familia
family,
lingüística quechua
from the
amazónica, Mestiza,
Pebayagua,
Santa
the
Rosita,
Yaguas, from the Quechua, Amazon and Quechua,
Xénica,
Mrs.
y
Santa
de
Rosita,
la familia lingüística Jíbaro, los
Xénica,
Aguajún y Huampis.
and
Estas son
from the
fotos de
Hebrew
los Metzés,
linguistic,
¿no?
the
Aquí
Hebrew and Peace. These are
compartiendo
photographs
sus
of the Maasai,
experiencias de avistamiento, de presencia de pueblos en
sharing
aislamiento,
the experiences
y es
of the
una
sites that they've
reunión
had
binacional
of the
sumamente
population
importante,
in
donde han venido tomando
isolation.
decisiones
This
para
is
garantizar,
a
para proteger a estos
binational
pueblos. Siguiente, por favor.
gathering
Bueno,
in
el
which they have been
corredor
making
territorial
decisions
Yavari-Tapiche
in order to protect
es el territorio
this indigenous
histórico de los pueblos
population in
indígenas que lo
isolation.
habitan, y a la
The
vez es
Yavari
su
Tapiche
refugio
is
en
the
la actualidad.
historical
Decimos que
area
es el territorio
or
histórico
territory
porque,
in which these
por
populations
ejemplo,
live.
los
We
pueblos de
say
habla
that
pano,
it's
¿no? La
it's
familia
historical
lingüística pano
territory because
pobló,
the
vino en
Pano
oleadas migratorias desde Bolivia, se
population
trasladó hacia el
populated
Ucayali,
this
el
area. They came
Amazonas,
from
en
Bolivia.
el año 300
They
de
went
nuestra
through
era.
to
En
the
el año
Ucayali
300
and
de
the
nuestra
Amazon
era.
in the year
Desde allí se ha
300
mantenido, ¿no? en el
AC.
área
And since then, they have stayed in that area, stopping the presence from external agents till the 18th century. Even the diplomatic commissioners to delimit the borders were expelled by the population, by the Matses, by the Maruro, which used to habitate the Curuana River. However, by the end of the 19th century, we started the rubber area, and just as it happened in the southern part of the Amazon, this included the massive invasion, the expansion of illnesses, less than human conditions, working conditions. And because of all that, the division, the rupture between the relationship between external agents and a subdivision was created. They dispersed and they went into isolation, some of them. The consequences of the rubber era also had to do with inter-ethnic conflicts, and they gave continuity to the displacement, to the migration through the corridor and the isolation of indigenous population. Since then, some of these populations have stayed in isolation along this corridor that has turned into the refugee. They are found in the highest areas of the river, having to adapt to these areas in order to try and subsist, and also to protect themselves from external threats and still stay in isolation, which is their strategy to survive. Next slide, please. It's also important to take into consideration that the corridor is a high epidemiological risky area. By being in isolation, they do not have any protection against the most common of illnesses, which is why they, and by being in isolation, they do not have they have not had any health services. We have different legal categories as well. We have two indigenous reservations which were asked by and created with the help of some of the organizations. Esconagua, Yavari-Tapiche was created this year, mid-April, after many years of trying to get it to work as a reservation. And there are two more areas, Yavari up north and Sierra del Divisor in the western area. In High Tamaya, there are also some populations in isolation. In Sierra del Divisor, the National Reservation Maises, Tamchula, Guatamayo, Alto Tamayo, the ones that have been, some of them which have been created, some of them which have just been, are being promoted. According to the legislation, national parks are compatible with the protection of populations in isolation. Nevertheless, in practice, we don't see this. We see the zoning of these areas which put this type of population in danger by accepting the extraction of certain things. The exposure exists. These forests where they have agreed to have open concessions have also caused many problems. In Brazil, we have Javari and Mayute created, forming part of this corridor, and conservation units like the Cuyubi Sustainable Reservation, the park as well. We have to say that really big efforts from the Brazilian government and our national government to make those norms, those regulations a bit more flexible, and to allow the construction of a road that would then jeopardize the health and safety of these people. To end, I'd like to say that during the work carried out, we gathered evidence of the existence of this population and how much at risk they are, imminent risk, because of the occupation of the territory by people who are working in lodging, by illegal lodging, by drug trafficking. The information also demonstrates that they are occupying those areas. Are found that there is confrontation in the northern piece of the corridor. We have people working with tractors. In Yavari-Tapiche, you have some houses that were built under the trees. These houses are only built in areas where danger exists. This is the strategy used by them in order to protect themselves from people. Right in the border, where the state knows really well which areas we're referring to, there's been killings of indigenous population by drug traffickers, and we could continue saying so many things. It is necessary to take this into consideration, this situation into consideration, being that the integrity of this population and those next to them are at constant risk. Thank you very much.
Beatriz. Realmente ha sido bastante detallada su explicación.
Thank you very much, Beatrice. It has been quite detailed, her presentation, and this allows us to understand a bit of the situation in which our brothers from the population in isolation are in. It's not just any situation, it's a situation of emergency, if you will. And they need concrete measures of protection beyond just the laws that are being managed by the government. Next, we have Hilton Nascimento. Please a big round of applause. He comes from the Indigenous Study Center. The center. Good morning to all of you. I am from the Indigenous Study Organization. I'm supposed to talk about two pieces of the report, the importance of the Canaria and also the threats on the Brazilian side. The next one. So what are we talking about? The corridor, as mentioned before, it's an area of 16 million hectares of forest, tropical forest, continuous tropical forests, and very well preserved. Apart from the indigenous population, the contacted and in isolation, it is a very well preserved area. You can see the map here. There are areas with deforestation, but no big areas with deforestation inside that corridor. Very well preserved in the border of Brazil and Peru. You've got Pucallpa a little bit down, and up here the deforestation of the southern area and some deforestation in the Amazon over there. That's it. Apart from a forest area well protected, we have one of the areas with the largest biodiversity of the whole Amazon area. The redder it is, the best it is. At the top, you can see the area of the corridor, where you can find a large biodiversity in terms of mammals, birds, and amphibians. We have different types of animals very emblematic animals. We have, in the Peruvian side of the corridor specifically, we have a couple of animals that are very strange to see in any other place of the world, and also primates as well. One of the largest communities of fish, also found in Peru, and fauna typical to the area, which is very diverse. In our area, we had 3 studies quite fast biological ones, done by the Smithsonian organization together with some Peruvian and international organizations to get some information as of the year 2000 in the Javari area of the Peruvian side, where they had and they found the presence of the large biodiversity of the area. Likewise, this area of the corridor include the areas of conservation, one of the most important ones, both for Peru and Brazil. We can see that they have three main areas for Peru within the corridor, and some of the priority areas that are within the corridor as well. Next slide, please. And to finish the piece on the biological piece, we can see this map with the concentration of carbon, which shows that the life in the corridor is one of the areas with the largest concentration of carbon in the Amazon area. This didn't come out, but it is around here. This is a very important area for all of us, specifically for carbon credit, and very important so that Brazil and Peru can comply with the goals in terms of carbon emissions signed in the Paris Agreement and ratified today in the Glasgow Agreement as well. Well, the whole area suffers of many threats, many problems. I will go on to the threats on the Brazilian side. The main problem, the main threat nowadays on the Brazilian side is the invasion of fishermen and hunters, illegal, all of them. There is an estimate of 238, almost 300 tons of meat commercialized around the border between Brazil and Colombia. Brazilians, we are responsible of 80% of this commerce, of this trading, and this area is one of the largest trade areas compared to other areas found in Africa, in the tropical forests of Africa, which are the ones which are the most known areas for this type of commerce in the world. You can see this. You have Taricaya, and in the Brazilian, in the Javari, Brazilian love eating Taricaya. The middle class love this for festive times. This is sold like around 60 soles. The Peruvian government has got 30,000 reais, about 26,000 soles, if they can just look at the fishing of Taricaya that they can get from that. Next slide, please. There is a lot of demand for paiche from Pirarucu, which is always associated with meat from the mountains. The Pirarucu is illegal. To capture them is illegal unless they come from areas that are well managed. A lot of the meat is going to Peru. We have a large demand. It also goes to Cabayacocha and Iquitos because the population have problems with the amount of meat that they can get. A restaurant consumes 200 kilos of Pirarucu a month, 2.5 tons of Pirarucu. Just one restaurant on the Brazilian side. Next, please. And this situation puts people at a great risk because they can have situation of contact or conflict with these people, with the hunters, with the fishermen, putting their lives at threat and at risk. Brazil right now has got a very big political issue. The national government right now, it's incentivizing this and before this, the weakening of our associations, the responsible part of the government responsible for the protection of indigenous land in Brazil are not doing a good job. So indigenous people started monitoring everything by themselves. Many organizations here, together with CTI and the Territorial, they have been taking safety in their hands to monitor the areas, like building those support houses and commissioning people and pushing people away from the area. Another big problem in the northwestern area, we have illegal mining, gold mining, that started happening in the 80s, and they have more than 1,500 employees. You can see this photograph. You have the machinery used by the illegal miners closer and closer to the corridor, and they are increasing because gold costs more and more people get involved in this activity. Another situation, there are beginnings of deforestation, especially to the western area. It starts in these areas invading the Javari area. This is the area very close to the area of the corridor, mainly for the protection of cattle. The construction of the road would incentivize more and more the selling of meat to the Peruvian market. And another threat that we can see here is the potential on hydrocarbon around the area to extract gas and oil. These areas here, we can see it here, are the seismic lines done by the Brazilian and the Peruvian government, which demonstrates that there is a lot of interest and there is a lot of potential in this area. In Brazil, right now, you cannot extract any mining activity, even oil, from this indigenous area. It's not that it's illegal, it's just there has been no ruling regarding this. So there is a lot of interest in trying to remove this so that they can start with the exploitation of the hydrocarbons. Okay, I think that's it, right? Okay, that will be all for me. Thank you very much.
Por favor, el siguiente ponente, Adam Bauer, asesor de ORPIO en temas de pueblos indígenas en aislamiento, para continuar con el evento. Les invito a tomar asiento, por favor, a ocupar sus respectivos lugares para proseguir con la actividad. Muy bien, muchas gracias. Estamos
Okay, well, thank you very much. We are in the launch ceremony of the Initiative for the Protection and Strengthening of Territorial Governance for the Territorial Corridor of Peoples in Isolation and Initial Contact and Continuous Forest, Yavari-Tapiche. From the Ministry of Culture, we are streaming live through the different digital platforms of the different indigenous organizations platforms, as well as some international allies from Brazil and Peru. Without further ado, Alan Bauer from ORPIO specialist in Piazza. Hello, good morning with you all. Thank you very much. We are now going to be talking quite briefly about some of the threats for those peoples in isolation. We're going to be focusing in the area of Loreto. Yes, we can start with that. Thank you very much. Well, as we all know, the actual forestry and woodland fauna law prohibits for concessions to be given in reservations or areas in the pipeline for the establishment of indigenous reservations. This exists since the year 2015. However, the actual regional government of Loreto has violated this law by providing 47 illegal concessions in the reservation Yavari-Tapiche and also in the future indigenous reservation Yavari-Marine. In Yavari-Marine, there are 43 illegal concessions. In the established reservation, there are 4 in Yavari-Tapiche. Those indigenous concessions overlay some of the territory of the peoples in isolation. We're talking about almost 3,000 square meters. It's a large area, and those illegal concessions have continued to operate in an illegal manner once again, and with complete impunity in the last 5 years without the national government doing anything to avoid it or stop it. ORPIO and AIDESEP, together with the Ministry of Culture, the Ombudsman's Office, and the Commission of Indigenous Populations from the Congress, have sent a number of documents and letters to the regional authorities and also to CERFOR, which is the one that has to do with forestry and woodland in Peru, so that these illegal concessions can be stopped and cancelled and that continue threatening the lives of this population. But we have never received any type of response from these authorities. So therefore, because of this violation of the law and the violation to people's health and well-being, ORPIO has presented 2 precautionary measures against the government, and the Ministry of Culture presented a demand against the GORAU in defense of national patrimony to cancel these 47 illegal concessions. ORPIO as well has presented a petition and a request for precautionary measures before the TACH, which are in process right now. In words of the actual Ministry of Culture and the Ombudsman Office, those concessions do not have the right to operate there. In spite of that, they continue operating in an illegal manner and with impunity until today, putting at risk the lives and well-being of our brothers and sisters in isolation, especially because of COVID-19. A contact with them could mean the genocide of those populations. Please, next slide. You can see right there, that's the future indigenous reservation, that purple line, that's Yavari-Marine. This is from 2005. It's been 16 years. It has not been created. The reservation has not been created. All these red polygons are illegal forestry concessions, which were given violating the actual law, but they're still there, working there in an illegal manner. Next slide, please. This reservation, Yavari-Tapiche, has already been created. It was created this year in April. And this situation is very severe because this reservation was created of an 18-year process since Coritab, the community from Maises. Yavari-Tapiche was requested in 2003 and it was finally created this year in April. Nevertheless, the reservation was created with 10 illegal concessions in its lands. But we have to take into consideration that the 23rd meeting of the PIACI, there was an accord, a formal accord approved by the GORAU in which they were supposed to exclude their concessions and redimension the forest that was overlying the Yavari-Tapiche reservation, because those concessions cannot continue operating because it is an intangible area. Nevertheless, 9 months after this and up until now, those agreements have not been complied with, and those forestry concessions are still there. until now. That purple line over there is Yavari-Tapiche, and you can see that there are some concessions within the area of the reservation. The red areas, the red concessions are illegal, and the other ones are illegal, quote unquote legal, right? Because they should be stopped, given the agreement that all these people have come up to. To close, I'd like to speak about the future indigenous reservation, Kapanawa. There is a severe issue with invasions. It's the most invaded of them all. In the last 6 years, they have built at least 6 forestry roads or paths in this area within the future indigenous reservation. You can see those red lines in the southwest area within the future reservation. I was speaking with the APU of Fukungo, and those roads go beyond any concession, and they are facilitating illegal logging. And so those areas are the ones that have the largest population or the largest concentration of indigenous people in isolation, because there are a lot of evidence of the presence of these populations. However, there is illegal activity being carried out around that area, facilitated by those roads that do not have any type of permits. There is no type of control. This is a very serious situation. This future indigenous reservation has been pending since 2005. So we hope that the special regime for the population in isolation can actually start with this protection to eradicate, to get rid of these people who are working around the area, threatening the lives of this population, and also to continue moving forward with the creation of this future reservation. Finally, I'd like to end with a brief transition to the area of Ucayali. To be honest, I am kind of sad that we are here celebrating these pictures of the Maloca, of the Conaguas brothers and sisters from an isolated population, because these Malocas had been abandoned, and not abandoned through a natural process of movement, but it's because they're threatened at all times. There are so many forestry roads that are being built along the corridor in the last few days. They are now expanding towards the reservation, especially now where they have their Malocas. And those Malocas were abandoned a few years ago, and they were fleeing this reservation with the biggest threats of them all, if I'm not wrong. Well, I think that Engineer Whitman will be talking about that situation a bit more, but I'd like to close by stating that that reservation is pending of approval and implementation of the protection since the year 2016. And up until today, it has not been approved, and for sure, no plan for the preservation of these populations' lives have been approved. So we hope that we can do this so that we can implement mechanisms of protection so Malocas, as beautiful as those, cannot be left abandoned, so that they don't have to flee on a constant basis in fear of their lives. Thank you very much.
Gracias, Adam, por ser tan sucinto.
Thank you, Adam, for being
que van a continuar hablando en el podio. No se alejen mucho del micrófono.
Continue speaking very close to the microphone, because we are having simultaneous interpretation to Portuguese, and we cannot understand. Our people from Brazil will not be able to understand what we are saying. Whitman Sanchez from Ucayali will also give us some details of this part of Peru regarding population in isolation. Hello, brothers,
¿Qué
sisters,
tal,
good
hermanos?
morning.
Muy buenos días,
Members
hermanas y
of
hermanas,
the
miembros de la mesa de honor.
of the table.
En esta oportunidad
Now
nos
we're going
toca
to be talking
ver
about
las
the problems and
problemáticas y las
threats
amenazas
that
justamente que
are
vienen
happening
acarreándose y vienen suscitándose.
even until
¿Por qué no
now,
decirlo hasta este momento?
because no threat
Porque ninguna
stays
amenaza queda ahí
just there,
nomás,
but it continues
sino
moving
cada día
forward,
va avanzando
advancing.
más.
It continues
Cada día va
damaging more and
perjudicando
more,
a lo que se está
damaging
queriendo
what
hacer
is
en
being,
estos momentos, lo
what
que
we
es
want to do,
la
which is the creation
de
of
este
this
corredor
territorial corridor.
Siguiente.
Next slide, please.
Bueno,
The other
ya los
presenters have
expositores
already
han mencionado
spoken
cuáles-
about
se han mencionado cuál es lo que
about the
abarca este-
area
este
of this
corredor
territory,
territorial.
and a
Y
piece
una
of it
parte de
is
ella,
the Ucayali
justamente,
area.
la zona de Ucayali.
Next, please.
Siguiente.
We are going to be talking
Vamos a pasar
about
un tema de
some
casos
particular cases, some
particulares.
specific
¿Por qué digo
cases.
casos
Why?
particulares?
Because
Porque
one of the biggest
justamente
threats
una de las grandes
seen
amenazas
in
que se ven
this
en este
corridor
son los caminos
are the
forestales.
forestry roads.
Si bien
There
es
are some
cierto,
forestry
hay
roads
caminos forestales
that
de que,
through the different
a través de las
concessions
concesiones forestales, redundando forestal,
have the
tienen la
actual
autorización correspondiente.
authorization
Pero
to be
hay
built,
muchas de
but
ellas
many of them
que quizás
um,
el propio
the
Estado, el propio
forestry
gobierno
authorities
forestal
have not
no
noticed
lo ha
them, or they
percibido o
they
no ha
maybe
querido
didn't want to
percibirle,
notice them,
y si vienen
and
suscitando
these
ellos.
roads continue
Por ejemplo,
happening.
tenemos por la
Close
quebrada
to
Chambira,
the
que hay
Cambira Creek,
aproximadamente de
there are
7
about
kilómetros.
7 kilometers of roads,
Pero
but now the question
la
is,
pregunta
do
es,
they have the
¿pidió la
actual
autorización
authority from
correspondiente a la
the
autoridad
actual
forestal? ¿Por qué le ha dado?
the actual
Cada
authorization
camino
from the
hay que
authorities?
entender que los
Why?
caminos
Because we have to
forestales
understand
son de
that there are
diferentes,
different types of
tenemos
roads,
en 3 tipos.
access
Los caminos
roads,
forestales de acceso,
main roads,
los
and
caminos
secondary
principales
roads.
y los caminos
But
secundarios.
these forestry roads need to
estos
have an
caminos
actual
tienen que tener la
authorization.
autorización.
Although the main ones
Si
and
bien los
secondary ones
principales y
are
los
within a
secundarios
forestry
están dentro de una
concession,
concesión
the
forestal,
access roads
pero
to
los de los
reach
accesos,
the area of the
para llegar al
concession
área de la
needs to
concesión,
have a
tiene que tener una
special
autorización
or a
especial
specific
porque
authorization
es del
because
bosque.
this area belongs,
Automáticamente toma con el tema
to the
del
forestry area.
Y esto se
This is
visualiza
seen
desde
since the
el
year
año 17.
2017.
Pero es como
But
digo,
roads
los
are
caminos
since
son de
2017.
17.
Why?
¿Por
Because,
qué?
because
Porque hay un
when they
tema de que
open the
cuando se
roads,
apertura las
you
carreteras,
cannot visualize that
no se
100%
visualiza
because
el
there are
100%,
only
porque son solamente franquitas
tiny lines, you know, and the
la
machine
oruga
just
está
passes
pasando
by
para
and
que
makes
vaya.
these
Pero ya
paths.
cada día cuando
But
hay la
once
necesidad
the
de
need
que la
for wood
madera
and the
o el producto
forestry
forestal
produce comes out,
salga,
then they start
ya se
widening
va
the roads,
ampliando
and in the
más.
future
Y los
years,
años
then you can
posteriores
really
ya
see
se
these
visualiza
roads. You
con
don't
mayor-
need a
porque ya no se
magnifier to
necesita
see
una
them
lupa para
because you
verlo,
can
porque
really
ya se
see them
visualiza
from afar.
completamente. Siguiente.
Another case,
Igual otro caso.
we have
tenemos por la zona de
Patria
Patria
Nueva.
Mediación Cayería.
As you can see here,
Como podrán ver,
there are a lot of
hay
roads
bastantes
being
caminos
created.
que se
We have
han
done an
hemos
analysis,
hecho
we
un
have carried out an
correspondiente
analysis,
justamente todo hasta el
even the roads from 2017, 2018, 2019,
2019,
all of those.
todo ello.
But once again, let me
Pero
mention this
vuelvo a
again. In
mencionar,
order to reach these
para llegar a estas
communities,
comunidades,
you needed
se
the actual
necesitaba la
authorization, the corresponding authorization. Has it
Se ha
been
dado,
given? How come they've been
cómo lo han
able
hecho.
to build these
Todo
roads? And
eso
you
se
can
visualiza
visualize
desde
this
el
since the
año
year
2016.
2016.
Carreteras
Startup
de
roads,
inicio, justamente
these
como
are the
estaba
startup
mencionando, son las
roads
carreteras de
with
inicio,
a length.
con
They're
una
not
longitud, todos
tiny
no son
because
nada
forestry
pequeños, porque
roads
los caminos forestales
um,
abarcan,
it depends on the
digamos, si es de
accessibility,
acuerdo a
but
la
at least
accesibilidad,
7 to 8
mínimo 7
kilometers.
kilómetros, 8 kilómetros,
And
y
then
de
it
ahí
continues
cada
growing
día
and
va
growing because
aumentando
the
más,
forestry
porque el producto forestal
produce
se sigue alejando, y hay la
keeps being
necesidad
found further and further away.
seguir
But these
avanzando.
activities,
Pero estas actividades propiamente no, como
as
podrán
you
ver,
can
la
see, the
cobertura
forestry,
de planes
the
de manejo
coverage,
maderables en las comunidades nativas.
these roads,
Pero estos caminos
our
son
activities
propiamente
are
esas
going to
actividades
help
que van a
other
ayudar
types of
a otro tipo de
connected
actividades conexas.
activities.
Y estas
As you
actividades
know,
conexas, como todos sabrán, ahí viene el tema de
you
cultivos
will be
ilegales,
looking into
que más adelante
illegal
estaremos viendo.
crops.
Siguiente.
Illegal.
Igual.
So in the whole
Toda
area of
parte de
Ucayali,
Ucayali
we have
tenemos
a
una
lot of
gran
deforestation. And people
Ya lo que
who
se
have come
mencionaba
before me,
anteriormente, por ejemplo,
the
la
community
comunidad
Flor de
nativa
Ucayali, Flor de Ucayali, if you have not heard of it right now, has a very serious issue with drugs and illegal crops.
Y el tiempo ha dado la razón.
And time has
como digo, 17,
has
18,
been
19,
right.
no se visualiza,
And now
pero
we
ahora nos
know
damos cuenta que
that
el cultivo de coca
people
está por ahí.
are growing
avanzando cada
coke
día más.
leaves in this area, and this can be
Esto se visualiza en áreas
visualized in areas very close to some paths and roads,
Como ahí mismo se lo dice,
established
carreteras
roads.
establecidas.
And there are roads,
Ya hay
and that
carreteras, y
helps
eso
so that all
ayuda
these
para que todas
activities
estas
can
actividades
continue moving
sigan
forward.
avanzando cada día más.
Next, please.
Siguiente.
Once again,
Igual,
we still
seguimos
have more
con las
alerts,
alertas,
concessions.
las
We can
concesiones.
see
Vemos
activities
actividades
that
propiamente de las concesiones.
belong to
Concesiones,
the concessions.
forestales.
As
Como ya lo
mentioned
antecedió,
before by my
otros
colleagues,
colegas que han expuesto,
there are
hay
concessions
concesiones que
that, let's just say,
digamos,
are
hasta ahorita
legal,
son legales,
quote unquote
como dicen entre
legal,
comillas,
but there are
pero
also
también existen concesiones en
concessions
su momento
that
si bien en cierto
had
han sido caducadas,
expired,
multadas,
fined, or
en
inactivity, or maybe
o de
stopped.
repente paralizadas.
These are the ones
Estas
that
las
have
que han
suffered
sufrido
the most
más,
because there was no
porque no había
control
un control,
from
por
the
parte del
government.
Estado.
Since
Como
they
ya ha
have been
sido, inhabilitada esa
closed,
concesión,
then
los extractores
the ones
madereros
who extract
vieron
the
todo
wood
libre,
saw that
vamos a
everything
trabajar,
was clear,
hacer lo
and they
que
decided
queramos.
to
Y
stay
eso es lo que ha
and
sucedido y
continue
que se está plasmando cada día.
with the illegal logging.
Siguiente. Acá podemos
Here is a
observar
summary
todo
of
lo que hemos
everything,
visto
of
de
all
todos
the
los casos,
cases, specifically
específicamente
how it's been
cómo ha venido
expanding.
avanzando.
Case 1,
Del caso
that
1,
in the area
de la zona
we can
tenemos
see
por
the
la comunidad
Sagasa
nativa Sahasa,
land,
el caso 2,
the Chachibai community
el caso 3, tenemos de
hamlet.
Ucayali,
We have the Ucayali one, number 4.
que
You
ahí
can see
abarca
this, the
justamente lo
concessions,
que
the
estamos mencionando, las
first three
concesiones
concessions.
forestales. Esto cada día va.
This continues
Cada día va
expanding.
avanzando
These are
más.
studies that we have been
Son
carrying
estudios
out.
que se han ido realizando,
And if we
pero
go to the
si vamos
actual
a la
reality
realidad,
of things,
todos
this is
sabemos,
something
esto
else.
es otro más.
We,
Tenemos
you know,
2020,
every single
2021,
year,
cada
all
día va a
these
seguir avanzando.
illegal activities continue
Todas las
moving forward,
actividades,
continue
como podrán
expanding.
verlas,
You can see this. We
la
have
vivienda,
ports,
tenemos
we
puertos,
have
tenemos
access roads, we
caminos,
have extractive
tenemos actividad
activities.
extractiva. Todo este
This
panorama que
continues
avanza todos los-
expanding and growing. And as I had
Y ahí, como
mentioned,
estaba mencionando, los
illicit
cultivos ilícitos.
crops, all these roads
Todos esos
started
caminos han
generating
comenzado a generar
all
esas
these
actividades conexas.
activities. We can see the
Vemos en la
purple
zona
area
morada,
activities
son actividades
that
de
create
deforestación.
deforestation.
Pero nos
But we ask
preguntamos,
ourselves, who
¿quién se
goes
va
to the
a un
mountain
monte
if they do not have
si no
some
tiene la facilidad
facilities?
del
And
caso?
one of those
Y una de
are,
las
one of them
facilidades del
is
caso
the
son las
roads.
carreteras.
There is an activity,
Hay una actividad y no necesariamente
and
al
now
monte.
there is a
Porque
road. If
digamos
you go
acá
to
una
an
zona
urban
urbana,
area, for
basta que ha visto un
example,
caminito,
people
la
see the
población
road,
llega,
and
se
immediately
posesiona,
after
hace
that,
sus
they
cultivos,
start putting their
todas
houses
esas
around the
actividades
road,
agrícolas,
and they start
y mucho
growing their
mejor
crops.
en el
But
campo, porque en
over
el campo,
there,
¿quién les vigila?
who is going to look
De una u otra manera se
after,
vigila con una imagen
after that
satelital.
area? We have some
Pero estas
satellite
imágenes
imaging,
satelitales
but
que
we
nosotros
are
tenemos ahorita, estamos manejando que es de geobosque,
we are
todavía
managing
pasa un mes para poder visualizarle.
we're managing areas
son-
that we
demoran
cannot
bastante.
manage. We have to
Pero
look for
hay
other
que buscarse otras
tools to
herramientas
have that
para poder tener esa
visualization.
visualización.
And those
Y eso
reports,
que el reporte es todavía
um,
un poco
I
digamos,
mean,
no es la
it's
realidad,
not the
¿eh?
actual
Porque ahí
reality.
tenemos
We
también
can
justamente
see
que
that
ahora,
thanks to
gracias a
some
las
organizations,
organizaciones
we
comunidades
can
nativas, ya
manage
se
real
puede
reports.
manejar reportes
We
reales,
have
¿eh?
the
Tenemos a los comités de
vigilance
vigilancia que nos ayudan
groups
a ese
that help
tipo.
us with those reports. We visualize all of that.
Visualizamos todo eso, como estaba
All of
mencionando,
those
mire,
activities
todas
in
esas
areas
actividades,
of
zonas
interest to
de
more than
interés, más de
2,010
2.100
hectares.
hectáreas.
2,100 hectares is not
1,738 hectáreas
small
están ubicadas en el distrito
area.
de Javari,
We
de acuerdo a la
have a
información
different
procesada en el
number
centro de
of
poblados
population
que están cerca del área
of
cultivo.
different
Siguiente. También
roads.
tenemos
We
actividad
have
minera,
mining activity as well.
pero la actividad minera
But
se ha visto más
they have
más
been
afectado
more
por la
affected
zona
by
del
this
Abu Jau.
activity in the Abu Jau area.
Esa franja del Abu Jau,
That's
que
where
va-
it's all happened.
ahí ha sido todo.
If you have not
que
been
no-
there,
el que no ha
you
ido
will
por ahí se
notice
va a dar
that there are
cuenta que
lots
hay
of
bastantes
areas
zonas
in which
extractoras.
they
Tengan
are
autorización,
doing
no tengan
the
legal o
extraction
ilegal.
of gold,
Pero vamos a-
legally
viene
or
el tema del
illegally.
amparo legal.
Because if one has
Porque
an
basta que uno tenga
authorization,
una
then
autorización
everybody
legal,
else joins
de ahí vienen
in
todos.
and
De ahí,
they
como se dice,
feed
se
from it.
abastecen.
What
¿Para
for?
qué?
Well,
Vamos a-
because
vamos a utilizar
they
ese tema de
start
blanqueo. No solamente existe el blanqueo
laundering
en temas
money.
maderales,
In
sino
all the
todas las
extractive
actividades
activities,
extractivas, todas
you
las
can
actividades
see
legales
all that.
Y ahí viene todo.
What has that brought?
¿Qué ha traído con eso?
There's been a study
Ha habido un estudio
by the university,
por la
and we
universidad
have seen that
y se ha visto que ha tenido
activity
afectada
has been,
la actividad
agricultural activities have been
agrícola.
affected. And
Los
also
peces han sido envenenados. ¿Y qué han creado ellos?
the fish
Los boquichicos, todos los,
industry, all the fish that
peces
were
que
consumed
normalmente
in
se
that
consumen.
area, there were some
Ha habido un
issues
tema de contaminación y
with
enfermedades
contamination
propiamente en
on
los
children,
niños.
even the
estos
fish.
sobrepasaron enormemente lo permitido ahí para el consumo humano.
Next slide, please.
Siguiente.
Well, for me,
Eso es
that
todo,
would be
hermanos.
all. Thank you very much,
Muchas gracias.
brothers and sisters. Thank you,
Muchas
brother,
gracias, hermano.
to
De
find
verdad
out
que,
about the
enterarnos de
situation.
la situación
The situation of
de alerta en el
alert
que se
that
encuentran
some
nuestros
of our
hermanos
brothers
los
and
pueblos
sisters
en
are
situación de
our
aislamiento y
brothers
contacto
from
inicial
the
es
different
preocupante,
territories
alarmante, y es
where you have
necesario
peoples in
que
isolation
podamos
and initial
tomar
contact. I think it is
acciones
key to
concretas
take
para atender esta
action from our
problemática
different
desde nuestros
spaces
diferentes espacios, a
at
nivel de
a level of
organización indígena, a
organization,
nivel de
community,
comunidad, a
state,
nivel de Estado, a
ministries.
nivel de ministerios.
So it is
Entonces,
of extreme
es muy
importance
importante
to
que
take
nosotros
this
tengamos
into
en
consideration
cuenta
in
esto
order to
para
continue
continuar,
moving
digamos, en el ánimo
forward,
de
in order to
de una
protect our
protección
brothers,
eficiente
the
de
Piazzi,
nuestros
in an
hermanos los
efficient
Piazzi.
manner. We're
Vamos a
going to continue
continuar
with the
con el
program.
programa.
And next,
Y a continuación
we have this
tenemos esta parte,
piece
digamos que vendría a ser en la
of
jerga
the
periodística
meat,
de la
if you will,
carnecita. Esta
in which we
parte
are going to be
donde
talking
vamos a
about the
hablar sobre las
proposals and the
propuestas
demands
y
of the
demandas
different
de
indigenous
las organizaciones
organizations. So
indígenas.
because of this
O sea, a
study,
raíz de este
what
estudio,
are the
¿cuáles
proposals,
son las
what are
propuestas?
the
¿Cuáles
specific
son las demandas
demands
de manera
that these
específica?
people have? We
Aquí
will
las tendremos
hear
en
them
breve, así que invito
in
al
a few
podio al
seconds. So
representante
please
de la
join us.
organización
We are
regional de los pueblos
asking for
indígenas del Oriente,
President
al
Manuel
presidente
Ramirez, the head
para
of this
darnos
organization,
un
so that they
poco
can talk
alcances
about
de
the
las propuestas y
demands
demandas de los pueblos indígenas desde la
and the
organización
needs
ORPIO,
from
digamos,
ORPIO.
que
They
lleva
are
la
the
batuta
ones
en la presentación
leading this
de
report.
este informe.
Thank you, brother.
Adelante, hermano. Es ahí.
Hola, hola.
Así es.
Very well.
Bien,
Well,
bueno, en la
representing
representabilidad de la
with
de
the
la ministra,
people from the ministry,
estimado
dear
dirigente, ORAU, los
a
el
lady,
hermano
the
de
brother
Brasil,
from
el
ORAU,
hermano
our brother from
presidente
ISEP,
de AIDESEP,
and all of you,
y
my
a todos
dear
ustedes,
brothers and
mis
sisters,
queridos
good
hermanos, muy
morning.
buenos días.
Well, we come
Bien, venimos
to talk about
exponiendo sobre el tema
this issue that our
de nuestros
brothers
hermanos
in
aislados
isolation
prácticamente
are.
que tenemos
They're the ones who
en
live
nuestros
in
bosques.
our forests. Well, I'd like to
Bueno,
mention
quiero mencionar
in this
de
way,
esta manera
as an
también
originary
como pueblo originario,
population,
así
this
fueron
is what
nuestras
our
malocas
Maloccas look like
antes que
before
nosotros salgamos
we went
a las
into the
orillas de los
shores
ríos
of the river
a
to
conformar
form
una
an
comunidad.
actual community. This is
Esto
not
no es
a drawing.
un dibujo,
This is not
esto no
a
es
lie.
una falsedad.
We, as indigenous
Nosotros como pueblo
population,
indígena
these are
es
our houses.
nuestra
It
vivienda,
is
es
our
nuestra
house,
casa.
and what you can see
Y lo que
around
se ve
it
alrededor
is our
es
medicine.
nuestra medicina,
It is our food.
es nuestro alimento.
Within that space,
Dentro
we
de ese espacio
have
tenemos
got
todo.
everything.
Entonces,
So what to do for it?
¿qué hacer
Or
por ellos?
for
que no están
those who haven't,
contactados
who are
directamente
not
con
in
nosotros?
contact with us, we have to
Tenemos que
fight for them
luchar
because they will
por ellos
never
porque ellos
come
jamás
out to tell
van a
us
salir a
or to
decirnos
tell you
a ustedes que están
that you
ya
are, because you are
dentro de la
within
sociedad, haga
the
por
society,
nosotros.
you are part of society now. Somebody
Alguien
said they
decía
are
que está
abandoned, and it
abandonado,
is
es
true, they
cierto.
are. Our ancestors
Nuestros ancestros
used to
así
move around.
se desplazaban porque
Why? Because once I
una
heard
vez escuchado
the
el
sound
sonido de una
of
máquina,
a
sea
machine,
motosierra, etcétera,
an electric saw, and every
retiraban
time
de
they
ese
would
lugar
hear
para ir
something
más allá.
similar, they would move away.
pero como estamos
So, but because we are
en
in
un
a space
espacio
that
que
there
no
is not just
solamente
one
hay un
group
grupo
of towns,
pueblos
originary population within
originarios
that
que
space,
están dentro de ese
there are
espacio,
many different
son
groups.
varios.
And each one of them
Cada uno de
occupies
ellos
a place,
ocupan un lugar
strategically speaking,
estratégicamente,
as we have
como lo
found it,
tenemos ahora
as you
señalados
can
los
see
títulos de propiedad. Así también nuestros
the
ancestros tenían
title,
un
the
espacio
documents, and they had
donde
used to have a
yo hasta
space.
aquí
This is my
con otro pueblo
originary
originario de aquí para
town.
allá.
This
te
belongs to
pertenece,
me, and you
porque no
could
podías
not go
ingresar
to
al
the
espacio
other group's
del otro
space,
grupo,
because that's when
porque ahí venía el
conflict
conflicto.
would arise.
Entonces,
So a large
un
space,
espacio grande, como siempre
as
venía
I was
explicando
explaining
desde muy
before,
antes, también
it is also the
es una
need that they've
necesidad
got
de ellos
to
de
move from
retirarse
one
de un
place to
lugar
the
a
other
otro
when they die,
cuando mueren
when some family members pass
algunos
away,
familiares o cuando
or when an
llega una
epidemic
epidemia
arrives to the
a su
Maloca.
Maloca.
And so it means
Entonces significa
that
que
this
así
space
este espacio
has
ha
started
ido
to occupy,
ocupando todo.
we're talking about
Estamos hablando de
16,000
16,000
hectares.
hectáreas.
All that space
Todo ese
belongs
espacio
to
lo
them
pertenece
because
prácticamente porque ellos más antiguamente tienen ellos
they
otros
have
más
ancestors,
ancestros.
older.
No son ellos desde muy antes, no
They're
son
not
los
the
hombres
ones
que
who
tienen
are 100 to
100
150
años,
years of
150
age.
años,
No, just like we are
Así como
here,
nosotros aquí
we defend ourselves here.
nos
They
defendemos
also,
acá, así
within the
ellos
space where they
también,
live,
dentro del
they
espacio
also
donde
have
viven,
children,
también tienen niños.
boys, girls, whom we
Niñas,
need to
a
protect
quienes necesitamos
even
protegerles
more.
más todavía.
They need to be well.
Necesitan
They
estar
need to
bien,
eat well
necesitan
because they
alimentarse
are
bien,
like us. They
porque
know
son
how to
como
eat.
nosotros,
They
saben
know how
comer
to
y saben
drink.
tomar. Entonces,
So looking into the needs
viendo
and
las necesidades
necessities,
de ellos,
we
nosotros
know
que
they
sabemos
exist
que
there.
existe
Why?
ahí,
Through
porque
different
a través de diferentes
photographs taken
fotografías tomadas de
from flights, we
sobrevuelos,
know they
sabemos
exist
que
there.
existen ahí. Tomamos nosotros
We take the responsibility
responsabilidad que
that we are
estamos aquí,
here,
que
that we
podemos
can
llegar,
reach you to this ministry,
ahora
just
a
like
este
you.
ministerio,
And we hope
que ojalá
they are taking note
se estén
of our
tomando
needs
notas,
in the
nuestras
defense
necesidades, en
of
defensa
the
de los
originary
pueblos
population. In this way,
De esta manera,
the
nosotros
representatives
los representantes
of the
de las
organizations
organizaciones
of
de pueblos
indigenous
indígenas
population from
de ambos
both countries,
países,
in this case Peru, where
en
we
este
are
caso al Perú, donde nos
located right
encontramos
now,
ahorita,
we are requesting
pedimos
the Ministry of Culture
al Ministerio de Cultura
to adopt
que se adopte
this
esta
initiative
iniciativa
of the
del
territorial
corredor territorial
corridor,
Yavarí-Tapiche,
Javari-Tapiche,
y
and
todas
all
las
the other
demás,
ones that we've
de
been
lo cual
fighting
venimos
for.
luchando.
We want
Queremos
for you to hear us.
que nos escuchen,
We wanted to
queremos
make
que se haga
it
realidad
to
a
make
través
it
del
real.
Ministerio de
We
Cultura.
would like for it to become real, as well as
De
the
igual manera, la
protection of the
protección del
corridor that we are
corredor que estamos
promoting
promoviendo como
as
ente
an
encargado
institution to
la
protect
protección
the population
del pueblo en
involuntary
aislamiento voluntario.
isolation.
Como un
Secondly,
segundo
we would
punto,
like to say
también
that we are requesting
pedimos
as well
también que se
to
acelere la
create
creación de
faster
reservas
some of
propuestas
the
que ya
future
mencionado,
reservations requested, like
como el
the
caso de la
Javari-Marine
propuesta
Reservation,
Yavarí-Mirim,
which
que viene
is in
encaminándose
process since 2005, and
que
until
hasta la
now
fecha
it's been
ya
16
son
years.
16 años.
That's what we are asking
Eso pedimos
as
nosotros
organizations,
como organizaciones,
as representatives,
como
current
representante
representatives
actual de
of
los
the
pueblos
indigenous
indígenas,
population
cada uno
within
en su
each of
organización
our
regional. Muchas
organizations.
gracias.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Apu, for
Muchas
being
gracias, Apu, por
concise,
ser
brief, and
conciso, breve y
direct.
directo.
Next, we
A
have
continuación
Zoila
tenemos las
Merino.
palabras de Zoila
She
Merino,
is
dirigente
also
indígena
from
también
the
de la
regional
Organización Regional de los
organization
Pueblos
from
Indígenas
the
del
western
Oriente
area
de
of
Loreto.
the eastern
Como les dije
area
hace
of
un instante,
Loreto, the
la
organization
organización que
that's
lleva la
carrying out
batuta de
this
esta propuesta, de esta
presentation,
presentación del corredor territorial
Javari-Tapiche, is
Yavari-Tapiche.
us.
Buenos días.
She spoke in another language. Good morning, the person in charge of the Vice Ministry and our brothers and sisters from the Ucayali organizations, ORPIO, and our brothers from Brazil. Good morning to you all. I believe that it is a very important moment for us to be here as regional organizations. I'm going to be concise and precise because a lot has been explained regarding the territorial corridor. We've been fighting for 16 years to create the reservation, but it has not happened till now. I am just going to say, to ask, to request that we are asking the government to recognize the territory so that the population or the people's involuntary isolation before the invasion can stop. Because the different illegal logging, because of illegal trafficking, because the state is not prioritizing, they prioritize the concessions, and we are being abandoned, and that's why here we are today to tell the Ministry of Culture to please consider us to move things fast. It's been 16 years since we've been waiting for this. How many ministers, how many ministries? Nobody has given us the right importance, and that's why we are here asking this. It's not a favor, we are requesting this. The second issue is that the second item is that we are requesting the government to attend the implementation of our demands. The demand is that you have to attend us. Why do you take so long? Why so much bureaucracy in the government? Because the government is the institution that coordinates with the ministry so that they can attend us, so that they can help us out. So please listen to the different communities, the communities in isolation, to the territorial corridor that it's been threatened. Please protect the territorial corridor Yavari-Tapiche and Yavari-Mirin and its integrity. We have a territory of 16 million hectares, she said, and that's what we are asking, because there are people who live there, and that's us. We are wearing dresses now, but our ancestors are there, and we are going to continue defending them. When we ask for them to come up with norms, regulations, laws to favor our indigenous people to work in benefit of the indigenous population. This is what I wanted to say at this moment in time, to ask the Ministry of Culture and also the regional government. Thank you very much.
Se necesitan mecanismos urgentes ante la invasión, dice la hermana Sonia.
I need urgent mechanisms because of the invasions that are coming from anywhere, from drug traffickers, from logging, from the government promoting these concessions in a territory of indigenous populations in isolation, not respecting the law. And the proposals is that the Ministry of Culture should reactivate the roundtable for the protection of indigenous populations in isolation created by Law 43-2 for the replacement of the name and to replace the name of working table of territorial corridor for peoples in isolation and initial contact, complementing what Ms. Zoila had just said. Let's hear the words from the ORAU president.
Buenos días a todos.
Primero,
Good
para
morning
saludar
to
a
you
todos
all.
los presentes
I'd
que
like
estamos
to
acá de manera
welcome
física en esta
all
oportunidad.
here present whom are physical
Saludo
here
al
in this
hermano Manuel,
opportunity.
al hermano Jorge,
Um,
al hermano Barney
I welcome
y a
my
todos los que
brother
estamos aquí
Emmanuel
presentes.
Baldine and
También
all
saludar a
those
los
here
hermanos que
present
están
today.
de manera
I
virtual aquí
salute our
acompañando.
brothers and sisters whom
Saludo
are
a mis
here but
compañeros que están
virtually.
acá
Also
acompañándonos
my
en
brothers
este largo
and
proceso.
sisters whom are
Saludo a
here
la comunidad
accompanying us
internacional,
in
a la
this
cooperación
long
internacional,
process.
que de
Also
cierta
the
manera
international
también
community,
tuvieron
the
la
international
iniciativa de las demandas
cooperation
de
that
los
in a
pueblos
way
indígenas.
also had the initiative
Saludo
of the
a
demands of the
Margarita,
indigenous
que nos
population. I
está
also salute
acompañando ahora de
Margarita
parte de la
through
ministra
the ministry
y los
whom
que
is
estuvieron en este
accompanying
escenario
us, through the
frente a
minister
esta
that it's
demanda que
accompanying
nace
us
desde los
today,
propios
and
pueblos
who were
indígenas.
here in this scenario
Esta
before this
no es
demand
una
that was
dinámica que
born
viene de
from
afuera,
your
sino
own
que
indigenous
viene de
population.
nosotros.
This is
Saludo
not,
a los hermanos
these
de
are not
Brasil.
dynamics that come from
Bienvenidos a
abroad, they come
nuestro
from
país,
us.
un
We
país que quizá tenga
welcome
muchas
to our brothers from
nacionalidades,
Brazil,
pero se
to
encuentra
a
en
country
estos momentos
that
con
might have
nosotros.
many
Nuestra
nationalities,
demanda
but
de los
they're
pueblos
all gathered
indígenas
here. The
no
demand of the indigenous
solamente
people,
es de
not just
Perú,
from Peru, it's from the Amazonian
es de la
region, from the
Amazonía
Amazon, the
peruana
Peruvian
y brasileña.
Amazon region and the Brazilian
Si
Amazon
hacemos un
region.
resumen
We're
de esta
summarizing
gran demanda,
this large
podemos quizás
demand.
sensibilizar
Maybe
a los
like that,
gobiernos de los
we can
países, a los funcionarios
sensibilize the
públicos
governments
y al
of different
sector
people and the civil
correspondiente que se
servants from the
vincula a
and the
esta gran
corresponding
demanda,
sectors
16
whom
millones de hectáreas.
whom we need for
No
to
podemos
demand for these
continuar
16 million hectares. We
desperdiciando
cannot
esta gran
continue
gama tropical
wasting
que favorece a todo el mundo. Es cierto que
great
estamos en una emergencia en
place
este
that
momento,
favors the whole
porque
world,
queremos defender
that
y
benefits
proteger
the
a
whole
los que
world. We
no
are in
hablan
an
como
emergency
nosotros.
situation because we
La
want to defend and
presentación
protect
resumida de los
those who
técnicos
cannot speak
que nos
like
han
us.
antecedido en esta presentación
The
hacen que
presentation, the
ustedes
summarized
se den cuenta
presentation from
claramente de la
the
gran demanda de los pueblos
people who made the
indígenas.
technical speech.
Estamos pidiendo a los gobiernos
They
actuales
help you
que
to
tomen
understand the
medidas
large
de
demand from the
emergencia
indigenous
para
population.
poder
We are telling
salvaguardar
our
esta
current
gran
leaders,
cantidad de
our
personas
current
que no
government,
hablan como
please
nosotros estamos
give some
hablando en este
demands,
momento. Grandes
give to our
amenazas
demands
avasallan a la
urgently because we
Amazonía.
want to protect them. We are
Hay acuerdos internacionales
speaking on
que
their
dan cuenta
behalf
al
the
gobierno
threats
del Estado
that are
peruano
covering the Amazon region, the international agreements
la protección
that
de
can
este gran territorio. Queremos hacer
that
el
can
llamado
tell
desde
the
aquí
Peruvian
a los
government
ministerios de los estados peruanos
to
y de
protect
Brasil
this
también
large
a
territory.
tomar acciones
We
inmediatas.
also want to
Nos hubiese
call
gustado,
out the
hermanos y
different
hermanas,
ministries of the Peruvian
hermanos
and
líderes
Brazilian
que
governments
nos
to take
acompañan en
immediate
este proceso,
action.
tener a los
We would
ministros aquí
like
sentados,
brothers and sisters,
juntos aquí con nosotros.
leaders whom
¿Dónde está
are
el ministro del
accompanying
Medio
us in
Ambiente?
this process,
¿Dónde está
the
la
ministers
institución de gobierno
whom are
que está
here. Where
relacionada con
is
las
the Minister
concesiones
of Environment?
forestales?
Where
Más
is
de
the
45
institution
concesiones en la
related
región Loreto
to
Ucayali.
the forestry
No sé si la
concessions? More than
Defensoría del Pueblo está
45
acá,
concessions in the Loreto
pero
region,
hacemos un llamado a las
Ucayali.
autoridades
I don't know
nacionales
the
de
ombudsman
estos
office
dos
is here,
países
but
para
we
tomar en
are
cuenta que sin el
calling
cuidado
them,
de este gran
calling the
territorio
national
amazónico,
authorities from
que
both
son más de
countries, so
16
that they can
millones de
understand
hectáreas,
that without
prácticamente no
authorities, this
estaríamos aquí.
large territory, that it's
Estaríamos
not unique, it's more than
condenándonos a
16 million
exterminar a estos
hectares
grupos humanos
practically.
que
We
merecen
would
ser
not be
respetados y
here,
protegidos.
or we would be
Lamentablemente,
here
la
just
indolencia
about
de los gobiernos
to
anteriores hizo
exterminate
que la
these
burocracia se demore mucho
these
más,
hamlets, these
no solamente en
populations.
reconocer, sino en
People
replantear
never heard us,
prácticamente
previous
estas
governments never
reservas de
heard us.
grande
You
utilidad
need to
humana. Es por
recognize
eso que
and
desde
to
aquí
rethink
hacemos un llamado a la
the
cooperación
reservations that you
internacional,
have. I am also
a los
here
hermanos
to call
aliados.
out the
Solicitamos
international
a los
cooperation to
hermanos
our
aliados
allies.
que de alguna manera
And that's why
han
we are
contribuido en
requesting,
este
we are
estudio,
asking
en
our
este
brothers and
diagnóstico,
sisters
en
to
esta
contribute
formulación,
in
para
a
que
way
hoy se
with
pueda
an
hacer un
investigation
relanzamiento respectivo de
to
este
push
requerimiento del corredor
for the
territorial
launch of this
Yavari-Tapiche.
requirement for the Territorial
Estamos
corridor,
agradecidos por un lado,
Yavari-Tapiche.
pero
We
no
are
solamente
thankful, but
es
that's
eso,
not it.
sino que aquí
We've
también
also
tenemos
got
una gran
a great
responsabilidad del Estado
responsibility
peruano.
through
a través de su sector
this sector to
correspondiente
take
a tomar
action
acciones en
in
la
the
implantación para
implementation
que
so
de
that from
aquí
here on
en
forward
adelante tengamos la
we
seguridad
have
territorial frente a grandes
territorial
amenazas.
security.
En los dos
There's
últimos
so many
años,
threats in the
la
last
región fue totalmente golpeada
years.
por temas
The
de
region
asesinatos.
has
No
been
podemos seguir permitiendo eso.
hurt quite a bit. There have been
Solamente por
lots
luchar,
of
por defender
killings, lots of
territorios,
murders,
nuestros hermanos han sido
just
asesinados.
because we've been protecting our land.
El año pasado,
Last year,
en
2020,
2020,
one of our
un
brothers,
hermano
a
contactado de
brother,
20
a
años,
20-year-old
solamente
brother
con 20
was
años
killed.
fue asesinado. El sector
In the
público
public
correspondiente
sector. The
tiene
public sector is
responsabilidad
also
y hasta
responsible.
ahora no
And
se sabe
even now,
exactamente
we
qué
don't know
sucedió.
exactly what
Por
happened.
ello,
That's
hermanos,
why, brothers,
consideramos
we
que mientras
consider
estemos en
that
un
while
país,
we are
en un
in a
estado
country, in a state
aparentemente democrático, nuestras voces deben
that
ser oídas.
supposedly is democratic,
gracias.
our voices need to be heard. Thank you very much. We cannot abandon the forest where our brothers and sisters live. Let's be loud and clear. Loud and clear the words from our apple. We are also going to hear the words from Bandinet, from UNIVAJA, from Brazil.
Buenos días a todos y a todas.
Good morning
Primero,
to you.
quisiera agradecer, yo digo
First,
Dios en
I'd
mi
like
idioma
to
tamacurí,
thank,
creador del universo. Debemos
I say
recordar su
goodbye
nombre.
in my language,
Mi
which
nombre
is
es
the
Vanito
creator of
Dacamarí.
the universe. We have to remember his
Yo soy
name. My name,
vicecoordinador de UNIVAJA,
Vanito.
Unión de los
I
Pueblos
am
Indígenas de
the
Valle de
coordinator of
Yavari.
the
Yo
UNIVAJA, the
soy de la
Union of
tierra
Indigenous
indígena
Population from the
Valle de
Valley
Yavari.
of
Yo he
Javari.
crecido y me he
I am
criado
from
allá.
the Indigenous Population Valley from Javari. I was raised and born there.
Bueno, nosotros, representantes
Well,
indígenas, por la parte de
we
Brasil,
we are indigenous representatives from
desde
the
la parte de
Brazilian
Brasil.
side. We started and we take care of the
Bueno,
territory from Brazil's side.
responsable por la iniciativa de corredor
Well,
por el lado brasileño somos nosotros.
We are
Somos 5 etnias que
responsible
viven acá
for the initiative of
dentro
the
de la tierra indígena
territory
que habla
corridor
portugués
from the Brazilian side. There's
para
5
defender
ethnies who live here in the
nuestros
indigenous land
amigos
that speak
que viven
Portuguese
en el
to
territorio
defend
del Valle
our
del Javari.
friends who live in the Javari
corredor do lado
Valley.
do Brasil, são os 5 povos indígenas.
Bueno, la mayoría ya dijo, ya hablamos sobre eso,
Well, the
sobre el
majority
impacto
said
de invasores,
we
tanto en
spoke
Perú
about
como en
that.
Brasil. Nuestro
About the
compañero
act
presentó
or
también,
what the invaders
y
do in
otros
Peru and Brazil.
antropólogos
Our
también han hablado
brother also
sobre la parte peruana.
presented
Entonces,
what was happening,
sobre
and other anthropologists have also spoken about the Peruvian
la
side.
tala
I
ilegal en la
know.
frontera desde Brasil, sacar
I
estas
know
maderas,
about
estos
illegal logging
árboles,
in the border of Brazil,
para sacar la madera,
in the
esta
Brazilian
reja.
border, to take the wood
También
to remove
corresponde al lado de Brasil. En Brasil
the
compran
wood from the area.
la
That
madera de
corresponds to the
la
Brazilian
madera desde
side,
Brasil, y los
because
madereros incentivan
Brazil,
a los indígenas de Brasil que
the wood
talen
from
en su
Brazil,
territorio.
they
Entonces en la noche
incentivate
pasan por
the
el lado peruano y dicen que la
other
madera pertenece a
the Brazilian peers. So at night they
Entonces,
go to the Peruvian
retirar
border
esta
and they say that
madera
the
es de Brasil y
wood,
dicen
that the logs belong to Peru. So to remove, to take
Las
that
invasiones, las
wood from
amenazas, y una de las cuestiones que
Brazil
tenemos es la
by
invasión de los
stating
madereros que
that it
salen de
belongs
Perú,
to the
que
Peruvian side, and that's
cruzam a la
how
noche,
they take out
sacam madeira
all the
de
wood.
Brasil dentro da terra indígena e à noite cruzam para o lado de Peru e dizem que a madeira é de Peru. E também incentivam a que indígenas de Brasil participem do comércio para sacar a madeira para vender para o lado peruano.
Sim.
También, gran
Yes,
parte ha hablado sobre
also,
narcotráfico en esta región. Río,
many people have
Yavarí,
spoken
en esta región,
about the
en
region,
Perú,
the
el
Javari River
narcotráfico
in
es muy
this region.
fuerte.
In Peru, drug
hoy,
trafficking
hace
is
mucho,
very strong.
Hace mucho
And
tiempo,
today,
mis padres, mis abuelos decían que esta
and
región es
today,
libre,
and for a long
porque
time
para
now,
nosotros, para los
the
pueblos
the
indígenas,
the
no hay
fathers,
frontera.
the grandfathers,
Si es el
they used
lado
to say that it was
brasileño, si
free
es el
because
lado
for us, the
peruano,
indigenous
entonces
population,
para
there were no
nosotros,
borders. We don't know if
caminamos.
it's the Brazilian side, the
Caminamos en la
Peruvian side.
región.
For us, it's
Ahora,
just to
gran parte,
walk around the region.
personas que
Now,
plantan coca en esa región,
the majority of
no
people
nos dejan
who
entrar,
plant coke leaves
porque nosotros estamos
do not let
acostumbrados
us
a comer
go
los
to
pescados de los
the
ríos,
small
de las
rivers because we are
lagunas.
used to eat the fish
Por eso nos
from the river,
sentimos
from the
así
lakes.
desprotegidos por el gobierno en
That's
estos
why
momentos. Yo
we feel like
digo,
that.
yo soy
Just not
Yavarí sin ley.
protected from
Yo digo
the
Yavarí sin ley
government.
porque
I
el
am
gobierno
Javari.
peruano
I always
no
say that
cuida
I'm
de sus
Javari
partes.
without
El
a law
gobierno
because the
brasileño
Peruvian government does
tampoco
not
cuida su
take care
parte.
of this side.
Entonces,
The Brazilian
hay
side does not do it
asaltos en
either.
el río,
And so
principalmente en el río, pero
there are
hay
assaults around the river,
demasiada madera
mainly around
saliendo
the
de
river.
Alta Jaquirana, de otros
But there is
ríos.
so much wood coming out
Salen
from
toneladas y
other
toneladas
regions,
de
from
madera que
other
salen
rivers,
y llegan
tons and
a
tons
Santa
of
Rosa,
it, of
a
timber
Islandia.
that reach the Santa Rosa area.
Também estamos falando do narcotráfico. Existem muitas plantações de coca no lado do Peru e isso causou muita violência na região. O rio Javari, o pai dele falava que era um rio livre, mas agora é um rio perigoso, tem muitos assaltos. E ele chama o rio Javari como rio sem lei, não tem lei, porque o governo do Peru não protege o lado peruano e o brasileiro também não protege o lado brasileiro. Então é um rio sem lei. Bueno, volviendo a hablar sobre el narcotráfico.
Well, we
Los
can
indígenas
let's talk again about
de Perú
drug trafficking. Indigenous
están
people,
además
our neighbors from
atravesando
Peru,
la frontera peruana
they
para
are
poder trabajar.
starting
Eso lo que
to
hago es real.
cross the
No estoy
Peruvian
mintiendo,
border
ustedes pueden
to be
observar,
able to
ustedes
work.
ven eso todos los
What I'm
días.
telling you is real. I'm not
Entonces,
lying. You can observe this. You can see that every day. And
de eso
so
debemos hablar acá. Nosotros queremos que el gobierno
that's
de
what we
Perú
need to
haga
talk
una
about
opción
here.
lo más
We
rápido
want
posible
for the
esta
Peruvian
región.
government to
También vamos a
do
enviar una
to
carta
take
al
action as fast
gobierno
as possible
brasileiro
in this
para
region.
que
Apart from that, we want to
se
send
pueda
a
cuidar
letter
de
to
esta
the
parte.
Brazilian
Los dos
government
países deben
so that
trabajar en
they
el
can
río
take
Javari
care of
para
that
combatir
area, of that border.
estos
Both
crímenes
countries
que
need to
existen.
work together in the Javari River to take care,
Todos
to
os dias
protect,
nós vemos
and
os
so that
jovens
there are
sendo
some sanctions
envolvidos na
to these
prática
crimes
do
being
narcotráfico,
committed
na plantação
there.
de cocaína aos indígenas brasileiros. E estamos pedindo para que o governo peruano faça alguma coisa nesse sentido de maneira urgente para evitar esse tipo de coisa. Outro ponto que queria dizer pouco das
Another
invasões
issue here that I'd like to mention is regarding the invasion.
para o rio Javari. Estão
It's
ultrapassando,
about
estão a
the
atravessar em Brasil
Israeli that are living there,
tem su casa, su plantación.
people
El
who
río
are
Javari
starting to
es
cross
un
the
río
border.
sin
They
ley.
have their houses,
Entonces,
their plantations.
con la
The
presencia,
Javari River is a river without a law,
con
full
esa
of
presencia en la
outcasts, with the
región, yo
presence
creo que
of
el lado peruano
these
no hay más
Israeli
pescado,
people in the region. I
no
think
hay
that the
más
Peruvian side
animales para cazar,
does not have
porque
any
están
more
regresando a
fish.
nuestro lado para cazar, para
They
pescar.
do not have any more
Incentivan
animals
además
to
nuestro
hunt,
pueblo
and that's why
a
they cross
pescar,
to the
cazar,
Brazilian
para
side
vender a
to
ellos.
fish and hunt, and they
Entonces,
incentivize
este es muy
our
fuerte
people
en esa
to
región
hunt and
también.
fish to sell them.
La invasión dos
And that
israelíes que
Israeli
pasan por
presence,
sua casa,
it's very strong in the
que
region.
também passam essa informação desde o Brasil. Também os indígenas observam que obtêm carnes de caça para vender. Quisiera hablar sobre el cambio climático.
I'd like to talk about climate change.
COP26 fue realizado este año en Glasgow.
In COP20, at COP26, the one that happened this year in Glasgow,
del cambio climático, donde el gobierno y gobernantes
they
de los
talked
países
about climate change, where the governments of the different countries do not have this sense of land for the forests. The government just makes laws, creates law to exploit the territory, large amount of the indigenous territory for us, the indigenous population. We have feelings for the land, for the forest. They give us life. They give life to the indigenous populations. That's why we, from Peru, Brazil, and the rest of the world, we observe that. And to observe it is of great importance for us. In order for us to survive, for an indigenous person to survive, it's necessary to use the flora and fauna we also have our refrigerator when we kill our animals, but it's a traditional one. The forest preserves the animal that we eat. We hunt. We hunt in the forest. We fish in the rivers. This is our market. That's why us indigenous people, we need the support from the government, from the leaders of these countries to protect this territory. They're all worried with climate change. But why not preserve the area of this corridor so that in order to present, take care and respect the lives of the people from the indigenous population, each one of them is a territory. We do not care for development. Who does that with the indigenous population? People are doing that. People who make the laws, who do not respect our rights. What does the government do? They deliberate. They allow them to take the gold, to exploit our trees, to get the timber. Apart from the meat, we hardly have any meat, both in the Peruvian side and the Brazilian side, for it to sell it in an illegal manner. So that's what I wanted to say. What I'd like to say is that you can reflect. I recommend that this moment in which we are here for you to really listen so that the Peruvian and Brazilian government can take action so that we can stop those conflicts that are happening in both sides. That's what I would like to say. Thank you very much.
Nosso mercado é de onde sacamos todo.
Que não escutei nada.
Para ser consecutiva, yo no hago consecutiva. Yo soy pésima en consecutiva.
Mira cuánto tiempo ha hablado. 15 minutos para que el otro hable. Si la señora habla, cada partecita tiene que ser, porque yo...
¿Por qué no ponen todo? Mira, ve, ya se olvidó de todo.
Muchísimas gracias. Creo que vamos a invitar aquí a la traductora para que ayude con la siguiente introducción.
Quisiera saludar a todos ustedes,
I would like to
a
bring
los pueblos
each one of you
tradicionales de esta ciudad,
to the
a la señora
traditional populations of this
Margarita en nombre
city,
de la señora ministra,
to Miss
del
Margarita
Ministerio de Cultura,
on behalf
a todas las
of
autoridades que están
the
presentes.
Minister.
Quisiera
Salute as well or
saludar
greet as well all the authorities
a
present
Jorge
today,
Pérez,
as well as
representante de
Jorge
la
Perez,
AIDESEP, a toda
representative
población
of
que
the
está acá,
AIDESEP, to all the population
todas las
that is here
asociaciones.
today,
Quisiera
all the different
saludar
associations.
la
I'd like
prensa
to
que está acá
thank
presente.
the press present here today.
Indicaciones de la intérprete.
Indication some for the interpreter.
Buenos días a todos. Quisiera saludar a todos los presentes. Quisiera saludar a todas las autoridades que también están acá.
Gostaria de cumprimentar a imprensa que está aqui presente,
Quisiera saludar la prensa que está acá presente.
as
I
entidades
would like
parceiras do qual nós
to
temos
greet the press
a
whom is here
parceria,
today.
que são o CTI, o Rainforest,
The institutions that support
Quisiera
us,
saludar los socios que también están acá presentes.
like the CTI or Rainforest
que
Norway,
tem trabalho de cooperação com as nossas associações.
Uniatéro que tiene un trabajo de cooperación con nuestras asociaciones.
I
Gostaria
would
de
like to
agradecer
thank
pelo convite.
for the invitation and tell you at this
Senhores,
right in this
nesse momento tão
important
importante,
time
momento ímpar para nós, esse
that for
momento.
us this moment is amazing.
Agradecer a todos os técnicos, especialistas que
To
fizeram
thank
estudos
all the technical
levando em
personnel
consideração
who
todas as
carried out
demandas
the
da população
studies,
indígena
which are so
contactados e
important,
não contactados.
Quisiera agradecer a los técnicos.
so much so for the contacted population as well as those who live in isolation.
Dizer que hoje a maior prova da existência dos povos nativos, tradicionais, isolados, é a prova de que eu estou
And
aqui,
tell them,
já não morri.
Quisiera
let me
decir que la
repeat, to
gran
tell
prueba
them that
de
the
que los
proof,
pueblos indígenas
that the biggest proof that those populations in isolation do exist is that I
Depois de
am
500 anos
here.
de colonização,
I am not dead. I am here.
Después de 500 años de
After
colonización
500 years of colonization,
contribuímos para que a humanidade também ser
European
beneficiários
colonization.
com as nossas crenças, com as nossas florestas e com nossos recursos que nós
We
temos.
can benefit from the
Até
resources
mesmo depois
from
de séculos de
our
exploração.
forest, even after half a century of exploitation. They're all benefiting from.
Eu quero apresentar aqui a realidade da minha região, Vale do Javari.
I would like to introduce my region, which is the Javari Valley.
Nuestro problema social hoy es prácticamente irreversible.
Porque a penetração dos narcotraficantes cresce,
Our social problem or issue today,
as atividades de fazendeiros avançam,
our social issue is irreversible.
evangélicos assediam nossa juventude,
Porque la explotación ha crecido,
Because the
la
penetration
invasión ha crecido, la
of drug
invasión
traffickers
también,
is
el
still
país ha
there,
crecido,
and
están saqueando
exploitation
nuestra juventud.
of fishing continues
talvez a
growing.
penetração evangélica talvez
All the landlords continue advancing. The missionaries, the evangelists as well, continue harassing our
La
youth.
penetración evangélica es lo más resistente que sucede hoy, tanto en nuestros pueblos como los pueblos aislados también.
temos hoje no Vale do Javari uma maior prova de estudo, não é uma invenção, de que existe os povos
Evangelist penetration is probably the most resistant of them all. The new invasion, they're the ones resisting in our land the most. We have in the valley, in the Javari Valley, a proof, the biggest one that exists. We have 15 references of the existence of isolated populations.
Todavía falta localizar a 5 de ellas para descubrir dónde habitan.
9 references have been photographed, confirmed, documented.
Nuestra presencia acá es pedir el apoyo.
And you can see in picture 5 where you can see where they are. There are still 5 to be confirmed in order to know where they live.
Con este enfoque, agradezco acá al Ministerio de Cultura para que
Our presence here is to call out.
Porque o lado brasileiro, nem a própria FUNAI fez o plano de contingência.
Focusing on this, I thank the presence of the Ministry of Culture so that together we can share this reality. Because the Brazilian side doesn't even done anything. The FUNAI did a contingency plan. Even with the actual demands, even with the initiatives from the different indigenous organizations and placing demands. I would like to finalize here with a phrase from my leader, the leader from the Javari Valley, and it says, and it goes like this: the land for us is the government. They are the ones who give us the fish, the forests, our plants. Therefore, our real government is the land. It is not the man's government. Thank you very much, and God bless.
Gracias, hermano Manuel.
Thank you, Brother Manuel.
Enseguida vamos pedir
Next,
a la
we
mesa
are going to
que se
ask
sienten
people
con
from
el
the table
público.
to take a seat with the audience.
Llamar, pedir a los
We are going
representantes
to
que nos
call to
acompañen.
ask the representatives to
ahora,
join us. And
Los
now,
representantes del Estado
the representatives from the government are going to introduce themselves. You already saw this, you already understood the problematic piece. Now we are going to also hear about the role of the government, to hear what they have to say regarding the protection of the corridor. So if I may ask the representatives from the Ministry of Culture, Health and Forestry Services. Some of them will be joining in from Zoom, as well as the Ministry of Environment and the Ombudsman Office. In the honorary table of this event, we have the presentation of the report of the Yavari-Tapiche Territorial Corridor. Thank you very much, because I have heard from beginning to end what we have said today in this meeting. I'd like to thank in a special way to Laura Canchaya Oyedo. She is director and head of the Population in Situation of Isolation and Initial Contact, which is our host this morning. In this morning, no, actually afternoon, because it's already the afternoon, so that we can continue talking about this, about the territorial corridor for the peoples in isolation. Let's give the floor to the Ministry of Culture representative. Please give her a big round of applause. Good afternoon to all of you. Apples, leaders, brothers, sisters here today in representation of the Ministry of Culture, in this case, in charge of this topic on the protection of the population, of the rights of indigenous people in isolation and initial contact. And it is here that it is why we're here today, to share with the Minister of Culture that we were able to identify 15 to 20 groups, so that we want to move forward with the authorization of the reservation. For sure, it is a process that takes years and that it is pending, but from the sector we were pushing for these processes to finish. And so today in 2021 we celebrated the categorization of the National Reservation Yavari-Tapiche, which comprises more than 16 million hectares. We've got more than 1 million in the reservation and 16 in the corridor. We also count with many qualifications as indigenous reservations that have got thousands of hectares, 2.5 of the national territory. Regarding what was mentioned before in relation to the indigenous reservation Yavari-Tapiche, Javari Marine, it is a categorization process that corresponds to the study of categorization. The consultancy company in charge of this is right now developing another product that will help us see the preliminary view of the study. And apart from that, it will be done specialized with a multi-sectoral table in which we will have people from the indigenous organizations, universities, local organizations, etc. Likewise, at the same time, we would like to mention and talk about the other communities, such as the Napo Tigre Reservation, which is in the early phases. In the early phase.
anticipado para presentar
There
el
is
trabajo
also
de
a
campo que se ha
report to
realizado
present
y en
the
relación a
fieldwork
la
carried out in relation to the request
sobre cerrar el divisor occidental
regarding
que fue
about
mencionado
closing
actualmente,
the
la segunda
divisor
fase que corresponde a esas
in the
direcciones
western
va a
area.
ser
This is on the
financiada
second phase, and it's going to be
por la
financed
DCI en marco de proyecto
by
PRIO
the
mediante el
DCI
proceso de
within the
selección
framework of
está
this
terminando
project.
y vamos a ver el contrato de la empresa que
The
va a
process is finishing, and we will
desarrollar
look
esta
into the contract of the
investigación,
company
también
that will carry out
relacionado a
this
la
investigation, also related to the
En
request.
julio se dio la calificación favorable
Then in July, it was in July when we give the favorable
de reserva indígena y
qualification,
así vamos a hacer todas las
so
transformaciones
that
de
we can
gestión
have
para
a
contar que el
future
financiamiento
indigenous
para iniciar
reservation
con la
there.
fase de esta
So
investigación previa
we
se
already
está
have the
coordinando en el
budget
DCI.
for the preliminary investigation
Comentarles que el principal
coordinated in the
mecanismo de
DCI. Also tell you that the main mechanism
prescripción es la actualización de las reservas
is the
indígenas y
updating
adicional
of
a eso,
indigenous reservation, and additional to that,
como ente reitor
as an
nos da la
institution that leads and that gives us the opportunity to get together with other organizations in order to guarantee the protection and also provide the safety needed to the population in isolation and initial
no
contact.
solamente las
Not
organizaciones
only
indígenas
indigenous
desde
organizations
nuestros sectores
from our sectors,
para poder
also a
seguir
strong commitment to
las
continue
nuevas convocatorias de las secciones
with the
para poder
new
seguir
award processes for the other regions, to continue working with the institutions, with the communities that have already been
ahora con la
identified.
reserva contamos con 15
Now with
puestos
the
de
reservations we have 15
de
control
vigilancia y
points
estamos pensando y
where
gestionando
we are
en realidad
vigilant, where
en nuevos
we are
puestos de
promoting
vigilancia,
and we are pushing for new
identificando lugares críticos,
safety points, identifying critical points
principalmente las
around the
nuevas
area, mainly
reservas,
in the new reservations,
principalmente en Tapiche,
mainly in
gracias a la
Yavari-Tapiche.
internacional
Thanks
podemos
to
seguir
international
avanzando en
cooperation, we
relación
can
a los temas
continue pushing
que
forward
han salido hoy.
with all these
Nosotros hoy
issues.
tuvimos conocimiento y vimos
Today
la
we
situación de
got to
avances
learn, and we
lícitos,
looked into
tanto dentro como fuera de las reservas
the progress that
indígenas.
has been
En el
made
caso de
by
las
the
reservas
illicit
indígenas,
organizations in the case of indigenous reservations as well.
En aislamiento se hizo una observación aérea
There was an
para
observation
identificar la
done,
actividad,
an aerial
observando
observation to
indicios de
identify the activity
narcotráfico.
or
Sobre
looking
eso se hicieron
into
coordinaciones y
possible
un seguimiento aéreo con
drug
con el
traffickers.
apoyo de la policía ambiental, de
This
la
was given with
Marina.
the support with the
Se hizo
environmental
de manera
police as well as
articulada,
the
donde se
Navy.
mantuvo
We did it in an
justamente
articulated
en este
manner. We
tipo
kept
de
the interest
cultivos ilegales
in this
que,
type
como se
of
dijo,
illegal
para
crops.
trabajar en conjunto con
And as
otros
mentioned
tipos
before,
de
to work
acciones
together
que
with other types of actions that unfortunately are going to be carried out and provoking the death of many of our brothers who
luchando en sus territorios, los
who were fighting in the territory, our indigenous brothers. The proposal from the conservation area, by which we are overlaying 62% of the territory with the award process of the with the reservation, indigenous reservation. We requested for this revision to be done and to protect in a much better manner all the area and the population. Given the strict zonification, which is what we mentioned today regarding the conception
estaría en el ámbito de la
that
reserva
would be
Yavari-Tapiche
within the Yavari-Tapiche Reservation, the Ministry of Culture. We made a legal demand, and we are doing a follow-up regarding that. Apart from that, we are requesting from the regional government, from the regional governor to be able to look into the activities carried out in that area. I don't want to talk too much. I'd like to give the floor to my brothers here, looking from our sector, having some synergies here, looking into the necessary obligations in order to comply with our proposal as public servants. We are here because of the people, because of the population, and we are here to preserve the lives of those in isolation, and also representatives of the different organizations who were at the same time and in an articulated manner to start stopping the advancement, the progress that these people are making in their land. Unfortunately, this is still happening. In the last period, we have noticed, quite worried, that they are still moving forward from our side. We reiterate our commitment. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We need to mention what has been said by our peers. It is super important to understand these initiatives and commitments which go according to our proposals. People in this event are here, and we have someone from the Advancement Office. Please receive the greetings from the Chief of Indigenous Population. I am here representing her. First of all, I'd like to thank the invitation of ORPIO that put us in communication. We coordinate things in order to assist here. This initiative is very important on the Yavari-Tapiche, where you can see a wide knowledge of the many threats that indigenous people can go through, especially those in isolation. I also like to greet our brothers from Brazil who are accompanying us today in this very important event, the chiefs and the apples of the different communities whom are joining us today, the colleagues from the Ministry of Health, Culture and other authorities present here today. As a matter of fact, in this framework, we acted around people's rights. There is a duty within all of us to protect these people. Also, it's got the same, but also international law protects them. It is a linking role. But we need it because the government needs to guarantee the survival of these populations. According to what you're saying, we agree with that norm, that regulation that asks or tells the government to be responsible for protecting.
Como já se fez visível nesse documento, exige nível de ação mais coordenado entre todos os setores, em todos os níveis, tanto nacional, regional e local.
Strengthening through the different actions taken here of the protection of the piazza, as the colleague from Culture was stating, we are adopting the corresponding action, so we're trying to promote it a bit more. As a Ombudsman's office, we have had to do some interventions, and through our reports in 2016 as well as 2019, because of specifically around this reservation in Madre de Dios, where we have established the non-compatibility or the lack of compatibility, or just how much they cannot coexist. The incompatibility of the Piasi territory, where people are the main level of protection of the state. At the same time, as mentioned here before, we have had knowledge of the construction of roads close or near some indigenous populations that are also affecting the Piasi corridors or land. Mr. Genaro, in the Genaro Herrera, we have also asked the Ministry of Transport and Communication to stop the construction of such roads so that they can start looking into what has been happening, because the beginning of this, the starting of this construction was there and not respecting certain laws and regulations. We have also taken some initiatives from the government to declare of national interest the Piasi. We have also mentioned that it is impossible to have an economical development without recognizing the fundamental rights of the indigenous population in isolation, whom are the ones most vulnerable to any type of pressure. The PSH, they have already mentioned many a times that the pressure on the land, on the indigenous land, is the main threat to the existence, the life of the people who live around them. And so this doesn't just affect the indigenous people in isolation, but also those whom are trying to protect them, whom unfortunately have had threats, attacks, as advocates for these people, and many of them have even lost their lives. Today is the celebration as well of human rights advocates, and it is important to recognize you as advocates, because you are there preserving the lives of these people, preserving nature and the environment. So from the Ombudsman Office, we consider to be important, we consider your demands important, and we are supporting you as well, the supporting of the Piasi. We are also requesting for all the paperwork to be done in a much faster manner, and also to avoid forced contact with this population. We are going to carry out the actual follow-up, and through the Multisectoral Commission, we are also invited there, and we are going to guarantee the Piasi. We are going to continue, but first I'd like to call the representative of the Surfwood, or whoever is representing the Surfwood, also Fernand, I'm sorry. Yes, please go ahead.
Vamos a continuar, pero antes quisiera llamar a la representante del CERFOR, por favor, o representante del CERFOR.
Okay, please go ahead, brother. Thank you very much. I'd like to greet and the Apu Manuel Ramirez from ORPIO, who was generous enough to invite us to the Ministry of Health to participate of this initiative. But I'd also like to greet Apu Perez, Apu Berli Enriquez from other Apus, distinguished indigenous authorities, also the presence of Ms. Guaman, from a colleague of mine from the Ministry of Culture, people whom are sharing the table with me, and also would like to highlight the participation of the professional people here and the intellectuals here as well, who have allowed us to learn a bit more, to talk about the testimony, the evidence, to give strength to this proposal, according to what I have heard for more than 16 years. For those who do not know me, my name is Yavari Tapiche. I am from the Ministry of Health. I'd like to highlight, first of all, that I have heard quite worry in the voices of our brothers, of our representatives, that the forced displacement caused by mining activity, drug trafficking, or illegal logging, and in other places because of wildfires, it puts in risk the life of the Piasi, the territory, but also their self-determination and their lives and their health, which is finally what I have been able to gather the most from the voices of our Brazilian brothers. Sorry, I'm also greeting the Brazilian Commission. Sorry about the omission. What would I like to highlight? Article 1 of our Constitution. It just says that the defense of human life and the respect of their dignity are the main thing for the government and the state. For us, this is a legal framework, Ministry of Health, as you know, my brothers. It is the national institution, the one leading the life and protection of the lives of the people. And to comply with that, what the ministry does is actions to prevent and help people, and also the attention of people affected by any of the illnesses, threats or risks that might affect the integrity of our citizens, of our constituents. And of course, furthermore, of those who live in poverty, of extreme poverty, of those who for one reason or the other are in that situation of vulnerability before any harm. In consequence, first of all, from the Ministry of Health, we consider that it is important for the government to generate the conditions to improve the quality of life of the indigenous population. And therefore, that would have a better health level of the society. I've been working here for more than a year. It's not just been a learning experience, but also an opportunity to start including in the health policies different initiatives that come from indigenous authorities. In different meetings, we have heard proposals that we have started to include. Within the pandemic, we talked about, like a year ago in Iquitos, right in the middle of some tense conversations, because sometimes from the government side, it is difficult for us to understand the diversity, the customs, the values, the ancestral practices. They are not always close to us, or because we have different beliefs. I am indigenous but Andean, and I have my cosmovision, and not always do we have that openness. But from that logic, we have created some indigenous groups of planning, of fiscalization, of the different proposals used on behalf of the different populations. Yesterday, we managed to get 81 million soles to push for people's health. The COVID command was a space that was supported by the Ombudsman's office, and that it was later evaluated partially by some sectors, and the balance was absolutely positive. That coordinated piece of work together with the indigenous organizations, just like this one, we have sustainment, evidence, support. Any support from the government has got a positive effect and can for sure help to transform people's lives. And this budget allowed, together with the actions taken by the actual organizations in their own land, to control the pandemic. We had native communities that got infected, and it was 5% of the population was positive, in other cases even 70%, and we lost many lives. But coordinated initiatives had a positive impact in order to take care of the lives of our indigenous brothers. Nowadays, one of the main activities around this priority is vaccination against COVID. And for this, we have also heard, we have also met with indigenous organizations, and we have implemented, apart from the actual vaccination, a territorial focus. Maybe the national brigades do not go just for COVID vaccination, but anything they might find around, because the pandemic limited the attention on health to the communities and to attend the population. This is being done like this, not only being done like this, but also it is also universal, meaning all of them in the right age established by the ministry, in this case above 12 years old. But in the third place is that vaccination in indigenous populations is informed and consented. And regarding this presentation heard by the different organizations, we have got it as well, the information around the fact that the brigades need to be accompanied by people from the indigenous, so we can have interpreters so that they can get these two worlds closer, the Western world with the rest of the world. We have more than 70 links nowadays, and they are accompanying the health groups. Last year we had 23, now we have 70, and this keeps growing. But also, are we doing to form community personnel, health promoters, with resources from the government, but also from resources from international cooperation, because we know that more than 60% of the medication is traditional medication. It's the traditional indigenous system. So from the government's point of view, from the health side, we need to complement what they do, not as a one and only method or methodology of health. We need to hear, we need to listen, we need to pay attention. And Brazil, in that sense, has got a subsystem of indigenous system that, for me, I think is it's possibly one that has moved the fastest. But I think that it is a great example to see, to follow. I am so interested on going. We're planning a visit to some regions in order to have that experience, to mock it here in Peru. We are in different times. It is not just a change of a government, but different times as well. And I think this is time that we work on behalf of the progress in terms of rights of indigenous population. To end, I would like to say that priority for us in terms of PIASI is to establish the sanitary rings, and also with the communities surrounding the PIASI. We have done that in different regions. we usually do it as well. We accompany the Ministry of Culture in all the interventions planned, of course, what is the institution and the head institution. And I'd like to share with the indigenous population, to the indigenous movement, that the health ministry is going to comply strictly with the role assigned by the government and the constitution, which is to preserve, protect life and health of the people independently of any other condition. We have a commitment to continue investing more money. The 165 million soles invested in these 2 years are still not enough, but at the same time, these are important demonstrations from the government to start protecting the health of indigenous populations. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mentrivio from the ministry, Doug from Originary Prince. Now we have Mr. Marco Arenas, and after him we have Serfor, but virtually through Zoom. Good afternoon.
Del Ministerio de Salud de la Dirección de Pueblos Indígenas y Originarios. A continuación vamos a escuchar las palabras de Marco Arenas,
for the invitation to accompany you in this presentation.
Pero vía virtual, a través de Zoom.
Within the Cernan, I am.
Buenas tardes con todas y buenas tardes con todos. Ante todo agradecer
and these are very few
invitación,
parts in which the population has been participating. There's 19 hectares altogether, with about 1,000 people on the field. We have to try to keep those hectares, because each one would have to take care of 40,000 hectares. So our model is based on a lot of participation. So, from protected areas, it is evident that the role being played here in the conservation of these spaces of nature, and that for sure many cases in 7 areas are associated to preserve the means of life of our Piasi brothers. This is something that should continue happening. This new model is one of the most interesting ones, one of the ones that has the best conditions, and especially with the way in which they manage things. So we want to highlight that. I think that is something essential here, to work together beyond the possible differences that we might have with AIDESEP. You can have an effort to guarantee the means and the territory in the case of the Piasi for Meg Antonio. This is an example of how, together with information of the Ministry of Culture, but based on information of the peoples in isolation and with no contact, we can save the territory of our brothers. And the same thing happens in this corridor, with this corridor that involves 2 protected areas, an area that has direct access with some rights by local communities, and I'm sure that here we guaranteed that 26% of that reservation is included in this territory, and if there is something that can guarantee this, because in protected areas, remember that we have protected areas. A protected area is not just a simple name. We have micro zonification as well to guarantee the conditions within the exercise of this exercise. So I think that's key, and also using some of the characteristics mentioned in the previous presentation. So in the corridor, it's the sum of all parts that come together. The state does its job, but also the work is not just a public intervention. It's not like building a house. This is it's about articulating not the sum of all parts, but also how to build one world, how to look to implement the conditions that we want to provide for these people, not only from the civil society, but also from the state, multi-level, multi-sector. You have probably noticed that we have some biological sectors. It's about connectivity. We haven't achieved to have a corridor that you can say is recognized and well taken care of. We need to organize the territory. It's a great and big challenge to have a territorial corridor that includes different population. I know the one from Paranawa. We can guarantee these models of conservation, but with good levels of livelihood as well. So how do we organize ourselves, or how do we put it out there so that we can manage the territory that in a way in which we can look for a common goal? So both areas in this corridor, one regional, one national, they are in 99% of conservation, which means that you can see the protected areas which are in this grid, and you can see if any of this grid has been affected. You will not see this because we are monitoring remotely. You can go in and you can look at the state of conservation. So these more than 1,000 people here can guarantee the health of the area. In this process, this is key, the recognition and the participative process in which this in the territory, and this is from the master plan, is a management process. It has to do with conservation, but in many cases we have to look into means of life. This is actually key to understand that by being a master plan and by looking into the safeguarding of the territory, it includes everybody within the territory and everything within the territory. But everything is subscribed within the territory, and we agree to commit to certain accords. And we have some protection plans already. And we should try and have synergies with the different organizations and not double the work. We need that, specifically in two things: with the protection of the area and to live in better conditions. That's it. And from the Suriname, our disposition of all our infrastructure, our logistics, the logistics that we've got in the territory to continue working with the Ministry of Culture. We have a framework agreement to work together so that beyond we are public organizations, we can talk about what happens in our territory. This is what is interesting about our effort. Thank you very much. I thank you. Let's put this together and make it happen. Do we have online the person from Serport, please? Can you confirm that? Yes, good afternoon. We can hear you. Hello, good afternoon. With you all, thank you, ORPIO, for this meeting.
Sí, buenas tardes.
My name is Levin Rojas. I am in
Te estamos
charge of the
escuchando
executive
atentamente.
direction of SURFOR,
¿Qué tal?
and I've
Muy
been
buenas tardes,
listening to the
con
people
todos.
who spoke
Gracias a
before
ORPIO
me,
por
and it is right. These are other times,
esta reunión.
and as our president has said,
Quien les habla es
it's
Levin
a
Rojas,
government
actualmente
for the people, because
encargada de la
because
dirección
of the
ejecutiva del
people. That's why we
SURFOR.
can tell the people from the different
Y
communities
bueno, estaba
that to
escuchando
work,
a las
that by
personas que me
working, the
antecedieron
government
y
is
es
not
cierto.
just going to work for them,
Estamos
but
en otros
together with
tiempos
them.
y como dice
So
nuestro
many a
presidente,
times
pues
the
es un gobierno del
institutions,
pueblo para el pueblo.
we
Es por
go
eso
and we
que
try
decirle a
to
nuestros
carry out
hermanos de las
some work
comunidades que
just by ourselves,
el
not
trabajar,
taking into
el
consideration
Estado
the
no
opinion of our
solamente es para
communities, of
trabajar
our
por
people,
ellos, sino
the ones that
también
are
en
really
conjunto
the
con
ones that
ellos,
need this
¿no?
the most.
Entonces
So,
muchas veces las
as
instituciones
a
pues
forestry
vamos
authority,
y tratando de hacer un trabajo como
the
por nuestra
functions in
parte
this
y sin
region
tener en cuenta las opiniones
we have
nuestras
been
comunidades,
transferred.
de
However,
nuestros pueblos que se
currently
encuentran allí,
we've
que son
got
los
the
más
presence,
necesitados.
a low presence right now,
Por
which is
nuestra
a
como autoridad
priority
forestal
of this
nacional,
management. We have to strengthen this
las
so that we can
funciones
accompany
en
the
estas
different
regiones de
governments,
selva
the regional
mayormente han
governments,
sido transferidas.
so that
Sin
they at the
embargo,
same time can
actualmente
support
tenemos
these
una
communities
presencia un poco
that are
baja, la cual
not
es
only
prioridad de
in
esta
good
gestión
management, but
fortalecer
also
con la
by managing
finalidad
well
de que se pueda
everything, but
acompañar a los
also to
gobiernos
redimension things. We
regionales
have the
para que
VPS,
estos a su vez
those
puedan apoyar a
forests
estas
with
comunidades
constant
no
production.
solamente
That's what we are going
en
to
la
do. That's
buena
what needs to
gestión
be
de estos
done.
recursos.
Nevertheless, we have to take into
También
consideration that
tenemos
this
el tema de
redimensioning of things has got
de
a
los
process,
BPPs o de los bosques de producción
because
permanente,
within
que
these
bueno, eso es lo que
BVs you can see,
se va a hacer,
you can
se
find
tiene que hacer.
concessions,
Sin embargo,
titles,
también hay que tener en
which
cuenta
needs to
que este
convey or go through the whole process. It needs to be favorable
un proceso,
for
¿no?
everyone,
Ya
right?
que,
And
dentro de
also
estos
to tell
BPPs,
you that
pues,
you
se
count with
encuentran
an
concesiones,
organic
se encuentran títulos
institution.
habilitantes,
As of next year, we will be strengthening
a todo ese proceso que
this
al final,
unit
pues, tiene que ser
through the
favorable
program with
para
KFW. We have a
para
large
todos, ¿no?
program, larger even
También
than the
decirles
CAF,
que contamos con
and
una unidad
with
orgánica de manejo
the learning
forestal
system CAF,
comunitario,
we will
así que
have
desde el otro año estamos
better
fortaleciendo
execution, better conditions for our brothers
a
from
través del programa con KFW.
the field. And now we have PIP3 and PIP1, which is forestry management, and PIP3, which is zonification. It is
mejor ejecución,
so
mejores
important.
condiciones para nuestros hermanos del campo.
We should get that first in order to avoid the redimensioning, to avoid the recognition of spaces where you can find certain communities.
Es importantísimo. Primerito se debería de dar la zonificación.
At the same time, we are requesting for the technical secretariat to channel the different or the corresponding institutions according to their specialization for the evaluation of this recognition, given that many a times
debe canalizar a las entidades correspondientes de acuerdo a su especialidad,
case,
¿no?
these PIACs
para su
are declared and many a time, but then later on we might have some issues, different types of opinions. So to avoid that, I think that our forest is our resource. That's where our patrimony is found, as well as our fauna and flora. And together with the regional government, I was telling you that these functions have been transferred to the GORES, and with as national authorities, we have to accompany the regional government. And finally, not only to articulate things with them, but also with different sectors
han sido transferidas a
which
los
is this
BORES
space that
y
is
como
now
autoridades
that we are now
nacionales
working
pues
on.
tenemos que hacer
So
todo el
it is
acompañamiento a
necessary
los
for
gobiernos
these
regionales
spaces
y
to be at a
finalmente no solamente
multi-sectoral level
una articulación
in order to avoid
con ellos, sino
any
también una
issues later
articulación
on.
multisectorial,
Well,
como es este espacio que se está
my
ahorita
conviction
pues trabajando, ¿no?
is that
Entonces
we
es
can work
necesario
in
que los
coordination or
espacios
work together
sean a nivel
and hand in
multisectorial
hand
también,
with
¿no? Y
our
así evitar
indigenous
quizás
population. Like
contrariedades
therefore, we have
posteriores.
the predisposition to
Bueno,
continue working like this.
con la única
Thank you very
convicción
much.
y la función que tenemos de trabajar en coordinación y de la mano con nuestros pueblos indígenas, pues
Well,
como
thank you very
CERFOR,
much. We're going
toda
to
la
continue with
predisposición
this
para continuar con
virtual
este
part
trabajo.
of the
Gracias.
presentation.
Bien, muchísimas gracias. A continuar con esta parte virtual, pero vamos a darle un fuerte aplauso a nuestros panelistas que han respondido.
Now let's give a big round of applause to our panelists who have answered the questions, some of our and also some of our proposals.
A ver, el rol de la sociedad civil en la protección del corredor
Now,
territorial.
the role of civil society in the protection of the territorial corridor Yavari-Tapiche. If you can help me with the technical piece, are they connected as well?
De
Thank
Rainforest
you.
Foundation Norway. Si nos escucha.
Thank you
Sí,
very much.
hola, aquí estoy. ¿Me escuchan?
Thank you.
Por supuesto, fuerte y claro, y te estamos viendo también por la pantalla. Buenas tardes.
Qué bien.
Thank you very
Pues
much.
voy a compartir mi
We're going to start this round with the intervention of
Ahora sí.
Anders Krogh
Bueno, muchas
from
gracias.
Rainforest Foundation Norway.
Yo soy Anders Krogh, representante de la organización Rainforest Foundation de Noruega.
Can you hear us?
Que
Yes, I
lleva
can.
casi
Hello,
dos
I'm here. Can you
décadas,
hear me?
soportando
Yes,
a las
of course,
organizaciones
loud and clear.
indígenas
And we can also
peruanas
see
en la
you.
lucha
Good
para
afternoon.
proteger
Okay,
a
so
los
I am
pueblos
going to
en
share
aislamiento
my
voluntario.
presentation then.
Recientemente hemos elaborado una nota conceptual, una propuesta, junto con y acogido por varias
Let me see.
organizaciones indígenas y ONGs
Okay.
peruanas y
Thank you very
brasileñas.
much.
Una
My name is
propuesta de
Anders Krogh.
financiamiento
I
para
am
la
from
protección
Rainforest
de dos corredores
Foundation of
territoriales
Norway,
de Piace. Porque quiero
which has
también
been
llamar su
providing
atención
support
sobre el
for
hecho
more
de
than
que
2 decades, providing support to
en la
the
frontera entre Perú y
indigenous
Brasil
population
existe también
in
otro
Peru,
corredor
especially
territorial
to
habitado
the
por pueblos en
population
aislamiento voluntario, que es
and
este.
the voluntary
Se
isolation.
llama
We have a proposal
Corredor
and
Territorial de Pueblos en
together with
Aislamiento
many
Voluntario,
other
Mano
indigenous
Aragua.
associations and Peruvian and Brazilian
Tiene una
NGOs.
extensión de 9
A
millones de
proposal
hectáreas.
on the financing
Estos
for the
dos
protection
corredores juntos
of 2 territorial
miden
corridors for the Piasi.
25 millones de hectáreas.
Because
Entonces
I
cubren
also
un
want
área
to get
que
your
es más
attention,
grande
to catch your
que
attention
el
on
país europeo Gran Bretaña.
in the border
Es
between
casi
Peru and
increíble
Brazil.
que todavía
That
existen
is another territorial
áreas en la
corridor
Amazonía
which have
del mismo tamaño que países europeos
populations in voluntary
que son
isolation.
territorios
It's called
continuos de pueblos
the
indígenas
corridor
en
Ano
aislamiento
Aragua.
voluntario.
And it has got an extension of 9
Estos
million
dos
hectares.
corredores cubren el
And
5%
these
de
two
todo el
corridors
bosque
together
amazónico.
are
Bueno,
35
entre los dos,
million hectares
tanto
long.
Perú
So
como
they
Brasil
cover
comparten
an
como
area that is
50%
larger
cada uno.
than
Hay
Great Britain.
2,5
It
millones de
is
hectáreas
amazing that
de
we
los
can
corredores
still
en
have
el Perú y 2,5
areas in
millones
the
de
Amazon
hectáreas
region
en el Brasil.
of the same size of European
Los
countries,
corredores
right, that
cubren
are territories,
en el lado,
continuous
en la parte
territories
peruana de
of
los
indigenous
corredores, cubren
population
el
in voluntary
20%
isolation.
de la Amazonía, de toda la Amazonía peruana.
And these two corridors
En
have about
Yavari-Tapiche,
5%
ahí
of
en el
all the
norte,
Amazon forest.
quizás el pueblo aislado más
Amongst
emblemático
the two of us,
es el
both
pueblo
Peru and
que se
Brazil,
llama
they
Corubo.
share like 50%
Mientras
each.
Y el pueblo Corubo fue contactado
They have
por
2.5 million
por
hectares
en el año
of the corridors in
1996.
Peru and 2.5
Mientras
in
en el
Brazil.
corredor Pano-Arábac, quizás el pueblo más
The corridors cover,
es el pueblo que se llama Mashcopiro.
from the
Y el
Peruvian side,
territorio de
they
los
cover
Mashcopiro
20%
cubren
of
grandes
the,
áreas
of
de
the
ese
whole
pueblo.
Amazon,
Y los
Peruvian Amazon
Mashcopiros
region.
pueden quizás ser el pueblo aislado,
In
el pueblo
Yavari-Tapiche
aislado
up
más
north,
grande en el mundo.
maybe the most emblematic
Bueno, entonces son
isolated
corredores
population is the one called Korubo.
mundial a nivel
And
de culturas,
Korubo was
pero también
contacted
son
by
corredores
Burfanai in
con una naturaleza
1996.
riquísima.
While in the Panarawa corridor, the most
99.5%
emblematic
de estos corredores
population
consiste en
is
bosque natural,
Mashcopia.
mientras el
And the territory from the
99%
Mashcopiro
consiste en bosque
covers
primario.
large
Y el
extensions of land, and the
95%
Mashcopiro
de
can
estos dos
be
corredores
maybe
consiste
the
en bosque
isolated
intacto, de acuerdo
population, the
con
largest
la
isolated
definición
population
de
in the
Impact
world.
Forest Landscape, ¿no?
Well,
paisajes
so these are
de bosques
corridors,
intactos, que es una definición
I
más estricta
World
que,
Heritage, part of
un
World
bosque
Heritage,
primario.
but also
Y
corridors
dado la
with
alta
amazing nature.
integridad
99.5%
de
of
estos
these
corredores
corridors have
son
a
bastiones
natural forest,
mundiales de
while it's
biodiversidad. Y, por ejemplo, el
99%
otorongo,
have
como se dice en
primary
Perú, o
forest.
ese felino
And
grande, se llama jaguar,
95% of
sigue
both
siendo
corridors
viviendo
consist
en
of
abundancia
intact
en esos
forest,
corredores.
according to the definition of intact forest landscape,
También en términos de climáticos,
which is a definition even stricter than a
cuanto
primary
más
forest.
verde el color es,
And
la
given
cuanto más verde,
the integrity, the
densidad de
ecological
carbono en biomasa hay,
integrity
¿no?
of these
Entonces,
corridors,
pueden ver que
these
el color verde casi cubre la totalidad de
amazing
los
place
ambos
in
corredores.
the Jaguar
Y bueno,
called
por lo menos
Otorongo
estos
is still
corredores
living
almacenan
there in those
13
areas, in those
billones
corridors, quite happily
toneladas
as well.
de CO2. ¿no?
And there is a large number
Eso es
of them.
igual
In climate
emisiones
terms, these
de Estados
corridors
Unidos
are
durante
very
2
valuable.
años y medio. De
The
igual
greener
forma, estos
in
corredores
color,
remocionan mucha
more
CO2
density
cada
do you
año.
have in terms of
Entonces,
carbon and
la
biomass,
remoción
and you
neta
can
de
see
CO2 de la
that
atmósfera
the color, the green
es de
color covers
50
almost everything.
millones, más de
And
50 millones de
well,
toneladas
at least
al año.
these corridors
Significa que eso es igual a lo que
store
las
13 million tons
del
of
país, de mi
CO2.
país, Noruega. Significa que
This
las
is equal
remociones
to
de CO2 de
the
estos dos
emission
corredores
of the
anulan
United
a las
States for
emisiones
2.5
del país Noruega.
years. In the same way,
Si bien es
these
cierto,
corridors
ambos corredores están cubiertos por
store
varias
a lot of CO2 every
áreas
year,
naturales
so
protegidas,
and they
así
remove
como
CO2.
reservas y
So
territorios indígenas.
the removal of this
La
is of
presión
50 million, more than
sobre
50
estos
million.
corredores es inmensa. Lo que se ve aquí,
But this is equal to
el
the
color
emissions
amarillo
of the country, of my country,
rojo,
Norway.
son, eso indica
But it means that the removal
la
of
deforestación
CO2 in
emergente.
these two corridors cancel
Indica
the
dónde
emissions
la
of
deforestación
Norway.
está creciendo y extendiéndose, y hacia dónde está extendiéndose. Y se puede ver
Both
que
corridors
el
are
corredor
covered
Pano-Arábac
by
y ambos
many
corredores
natural
están
protected
casi
areas,
totalmente
as well as
rodeada
reservations
por
and
deforestación que
territorial
está
land, and indigenous
acercándose
territorial land.
a los
The
corredores.
pressure
Y
on these
en muchos
territories, on
sitios,
these
como
corridors, is
acá,
immense. It's
acá y acá,
huge. You can see
ya
in yellow
la
here
deforestación
and
ya
red.
ha entrado a los corredores, ya está afectando
This
a
indicates
los corredores territoriales. Y la tasa de
it shows where
deforestación
deforestation is
ha
growing
cuadriplicado
and
durante los
expanding,
últimos 10
and
años.
towards where is it expanding. And you can also
Hay
see
también, como hemos
that
visto
the
antes en
Panarawa
las
corridor and both
presentaciones
corridors are
anteriores, hay
almost
concesiones
surrounded
forestales
of
y hay
deforestation that
tala,
is
tanto legal como
approaching the
ilegal,
corridors.
en varios sitios
And many
del corredor.
places like this one,
Y sumamos a todo eso, bueno, no, primero hay
deforestation
también
has
4
already
carreteras oficiales, ¿no?
touched
propuestas con
some of the corridors.
Con respaldo político que
And the deforestation rate has grown 4 times in the last 10 years. As you can also see in the previous presentations, you have forestry concessions, and there is logging, illegal and legal, in many places, many areas of the corridor. And if we add all that, well, first of all, there are 4 roads as well, official, proposed, right? With political backup as well. That if they were to stay, they would cross by critical land of the corridor, these 4 roads, proposed roads. And if we add all those threats, we will see that the pressure is amazing, and that the protection in practice, even then, although there is a lot of protection, formal protection, we could say, protection in practice is very weak,
Rainforest Foundation Norway,
which is why it is urgent to start with the protection of those corridors. Otherwise, those corridors are going to disappear, same as the other cultural patrimonies or what is happening around the world. That's why we have drafted this conceptual map for the protection of continuous territory, the largest in the world. About 25 million hectares of primary forest in Peru and Brazil. It is a proposal from Rainforest Foundation Norway and many other NGOs and Peruvian indigenous associations of Peru and Brazil. The main goal here of this proposal is that social and ecological organization here is protected. This means that we have to look into all these threats and that are already affecting the corridors, the forest and the lives of the indigenous populations in isolation. And we have to do this under the principle of no contact. It is very well established that the best way of ensuring, of protecting the right of peoples in isolation, of autonomy, life, territory, the best way of doing that is to respect the decision of living without any contact with the society surrounding them. That program needs to be implemented based on that principle and ensure that right of no contact. Well, it is a very ambitious proposal, but the strategy is quite clear. The main thing is to work and to involve all the dozens of communities that form the area around the corridors, to work on governance, local governance, on sustainable management, and to train them so we can look into the limits of the corridors and look after them as well. In such a way, we can imagine that these communities that surround the corridors can form barriers, effective barriers, against the threats that are getting closer and that are already affecting the corridors. At the same time, we're going to propose for them to create alliances, binational, or with the exchange of experiences as well as alliances, to help take better these political decisions and also to include private businesses that might want to work here, and also the official recognition of these territories in Peru and Brazil, the official recognition of the benefits that convey the comprehensive management of these corridors, recognizing that they are continuous spaces of territories of indigenous peoples in isolation, and treat them as such areas of continuous spaces of population in isolation. And we are going to propose that Peru and Brazil can recognize the comprehensive protection of these corridors as a crucial measure in order to comply with their obligation, with the international obligation around climate, around biodiversity, human rights, and propose as well that we are establishing a committee that is multi-sectoral for the sustainable management of the surrounding areas, as well as the areas around the population in isolation. Given the high concentration of carbon stored in the trees of these two corridors, and given the very rich biodiversity that exists there, there are high expectations and there are high probabilities that both Peru and Brazil can receive compensation through different institutions on climate change and biodiversity at large scale for protecting these corridors against deforestation and degradation. And this proposal, this program, will provide
también se va a requerir
everything so that you can get the financing. Well, we are going to require a large number of alliances in order to achieve the objectives, the proposals, and also different alliances between indigenous people and non-indigenous population, also with NGOs, experts, activists, consultants, etc. And also we're going to require a close collaboration with the local governments and establish official agreements for the implementation of governance plans to put order in the whole area, to manage the area, to secure the area. Well, given that these two areas, these two territories have a world character and that are social and ecologically important, giving this, there are high probabilities that we can find a lot of importance worldwide, and this will help us get the objectives of the proposal. It will be a program that will last about 10 years, 2 periods of 5 years each. And we will extend it to the partners, the alliances, the local communities in a progressive manner.
Así que escuchamos, John Ray. Muchas gracias y buenas tardes a todos y todas. En primer lugar, quería felicitar a todos los pueblos indígenas y sus respectivos líderes que están presentes en esta ocasión. Los colegas de Yavari, todos los líderes de Loreto y de Ucayali.
Sharing this interesting slide, we've been told that John Ray from NISPEN is also here. So we can hear you, John Ray. Thank you very much. Good afternoon with you all. First of all, I wanted to congratulate
a las
all the indigenous population and the leaders who are present in this occasion, our colleagues from the Javari, all the leaders from Loreto, Ucayali.
que tienen un papel importante
This proposal
en este tema.
arises from your vision, and its success will depend mainly on your effort together with these other actors who are present here today, which I also wanted to congratulate. I wanted to congratulate the authorities, the Peruvian authorities present here today, from the different institutions, official institutions, who have a very important part in this issue, and also wanted to congratulate our other allies on this proposal whom are here today, the ones whom are joining us in this table today from RFN, CTI, IDL, as well as the rest involved and committed with the efforts. And finally, also to congratulate the technical people, as somebody else said before, the intellectuals, the specialists who have contributed to the study being carried out today.
En nuestra vida como institución.
Interim, the institution that I am representing today is an international institution whose mission is to recognize and support the defense and care for the indigenous population in the whole planet, right? For sure, we cannot work in the whole planet, and since the beginning, in our life as an institution which started in 2017, we recognized that this region between the border region between Peru and Brazil and the indigenous communities that live there, it is a place, a unique place. There are no two in the world, and this presentation highlighted very well that to lose the integrity of these territories, the planet would, Peru, Brazil, and everybody, we would all lose something essential to us of what being a human being is. And well, and that the planet wouldn't be the same, not just in carbon and things like that that we know how to count now, but in a deeper manner. So in that sense, we count with as partners to the UNIVAJA, represented through their baseline organizations, the regional organization of indigenous population from the Brazilian side, COIABI, the Observatory for Human Rights, from population peoples in isolation and initial contact from Brazil, which is OP. And lately, with ORPIO and the AIDESEP, as well as with the ties that we have with RFN and others present today. I have been assisting to, I've been hearing the different presentations, and there were moments in time in which if you were to look at the reality with your eyes wide open, there would be, there are a lot of reasons to get desperate, really. That the dynamics that have been happening and the cultures and the
Una que se ha
ecosystems.
comentado hoy mucho la ausencia del Estado en esos espacios más remotos
Are
de
active,
esos
and
países.
those spaces
Y los representantes de
from
las instancias
and
públicas
are active in the spaces
han
we're talking
descrito
about today.
la dificultad
So, given that
de
we
ejercer
have
sus
good reasons
funciones
to worry
en las
about,
condiciones
and
que actualmente
sometimes
se
to
dan.
get this but we
Pero
should talk
hemos
about
visto
the
en tiempos
aspects that would
recientes
give us
que
hope, right?
sí,
I
sí es
see them
posible
in two
la
categories.
gestión
One
de estos
that has been
espacios.
mentioned today quite a
Estoy
bit,
pensando del propio
the
la
absence
tierra indígena
of
del
the
Yavarí,
state
que es la
in
tierra
those
indígena más grande de
most
todos
remote
estos
areas from
corredores.
those countries. And the
Que
representatives
hoy vive
from the public
momentos muy
institutions
difíciles,
have
pero
described the
en el
difficulty
pasado no
of
muy
being
distante,
able to carry out their work
fue
in
un
the
lugar donde se
conditions
mejoró mucho
currently
las
happening. But we
condiciones
have
de
also seen
protección
quite
de los
recently
ecosistemas, de la
that
abundancia de
it
carne,
is possible.
de
The
animales,
management
peces
of
para
these
la
spaces
caza y la
is
pesca,
possible.
debido a una
I
intervención
am
fuerte
thinking around
del Estado
the
brasileño,
indigenous land of
bajo
Yavarí, which is the
liderazgo
largest
fuerte y en colaboración
in amongst
con
these
las
corridors,
comunidades
and that
indígenas que
today
componían
lives very difficult times,
grupos de
but
vigilancia y
that in the
lograban
past,
proteger el
not very
territorio.
distant past, by the way,
Eh,
it was a place
Otro ejemplo que
where
se me vino a la
working
cabeza
conditions
cuando
of the
escuchando
conditions of
el
protection
representante del Ministerio
improved
de
a lot.
Salud es que en el Javari, que es el lugar que yo conozco mejor
The protection of
los
fish,
corredores,
animals for hunting, for
vino el
fishing,
COVID-19,
thanks to a strong
bajo
presence of the
el
Brazilian
liderazgo
government,
de UNIVAJA,
and also in collaboration
trabajando de
with
cerca
the indigenous
con el
communities
Estado
that were
y con
part
otros actores,
of
montaron
different vigilant
rápidamente
groups,
un,
and that who were
no
able to protect
solamente
the
una
territory.
campaña de vacunación que logró casi la
Another
vacunación
example that
universal
comes
de
to
las
mind
comunidades en el
when listening
territorio,
to this
pero
is the
también
representative from the Ministry
montaron
of
11
Health in the Javari area, which is the place that I know the most
enfermerías o
regarding these corridors.
clínicas de
When
campaña
COVID came in
con su
2019,
oxígeno que evitó la remoción de
under the
personas
leadership
afectadas por el COVID,
of
y hizo con
UNIVAJA,
que,
working together
casi
and
no hubo
closely
muertos,
with the government and with other
durante
actors,
hasta ahora
we
del COVID en
placed
el territorio.
quite quickly
Entonces,
not only a vaccination
esos
campaign
éxitos
that was
a
able to
veces
get
van
universal
despercebidos,
vaccination of the communities
por
in the territory,
la
but
cantidad
also
de fracasos o digamos
they
de
had
situaciones difíciles
11
que son reales
clinics
y vividas por los pueblos, pero sí hay
with oxygen,
sabemos
which
que
avoided
las
the removal of
organizaciones
people
indígenas,
affected by
estados,
COVID,
otros aliados pueden
and
trabajar juntos
there were hardly any
tener éxito,
deaths,
aunque
even until
los
now,
desafíos
from
sean
COVID
muy
in the
grandes.
territory.
Y
And
otro,
so,
para
these
finalizar en el tema
successes
de
sometimes
esperanza,
are
yo me
not
acuerdo
seen
una vez que estaba hablando con
because of
con
the
Paulo Marubo,
number of failures or
que
difficult
su
situations, if you
idioma
will,
se llama
which
Canuco,
are real and lived
estábamos
by
mirando
the
el
people.
bosque y él
But
me
we do
dice,
know
yo pienso
that
que
indigenous
cuando usted
organizations,
mira
the
el
state,
bosque,
and other allies can work
usted ve
together
árboles.
in order
Lo que
to
yo veo
be
son vidas.
successful, although the
Lo que yo
challenges
veo
might
son
be
parientes,
too big.
familiares. Y
And
eso,
to finish up
siendo
here
así,
in terms of
yo no puedo
hope,
dejar de
I remember
proteger
that
eso.
once that I was talking to
Y
Paulo
justamente
Marubo,
hoy, mientras hablamos
that in
el día
his
de
language
hoy,
is called
la
Canapa,
segunda expedición de una
and
nueva
we were
unidad de
looking
vigilancia indígena
at
de
the
UNIVAJA
forest,
está en
and he
campo,
said to me, I think that
trabajando
when
para
you
proteger
look at the forest,
su territorio.
you see
Es una
trees.
iniciativa nueva
What I
motivada
see
por
are lives.
la ausencia del
what I see are family members, relatives, and that being like that, I cannot just stop protecting that area. And today, while we were talking today with the second expedition, a new unit from UNIVAJA is on the field working to protect the territory. It is a new initiative motivated by the absence of the government and before the many challenges and invasions experimented by in the territory. So in that sense, Uniaõ is willing to do anything in our hands for the success of this proposal and to take all the efforts to protect and ensure the human rights and life of the people. Thank you very much. Thank you, John Ray from Uniaõ. Next, we have a short intervention via Zoom from Thomas Johansen from Rainforest Norway as well. Thank you very much. Go ahead. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for giving me the floor. I also like to welcome you, to greet you as well on behalf of Norway, of Rainforest Norway, saluting those representatives from the different organizations, from the Peruvian government, the indigenous authorities, associations from Brazil and Peru, to our colleagues whom are there, and also the ones participating in a virtual manner. My name is Thomas Johansen. I am the head of the program for Peru and Colombia for Rainforest Norway. I've also been listening to the different presentations given here today, learning from you, from all your information, from the information that you are providing regarding this situation. First of all, I'd like to congratulate you and mainly congratulate our allies in the different indigenous organizations, both from Brazil and Peru, for all the great achievements that they have reached, because a lot has been done and achieved. The defense of these territories, because from what we have seen in the map, we see that these territories at least exist, they're there intact, we have to protect them. But I also think that it is thanks to all of you and the indigenous organizations and their decision to defend these territories, places that already exist, and that is a great achievement. Also, new achievement like the protection of this year of the Yavari-Tapiche Reservation, which is an achievement that I think in which you have worked for more than 10 years to establish officially this reservation. And congratulations on that. That demonstrates that all those years were fruitful in the end, and that you do not have to think that if it's not achieved in 1 or 2 years, we have to give up, but we have to continue, we have to move forward. You are here to obtain them. And lately, the paperwork, the documentation, the investigation, and today the presentation of the report on the corridor, which is an amazing achievement. And thank you very much to Beatriz and engineer Freitas and their teams to carry out this for the massive amount of work that they're doing, that they continue doing. I think that we are in crucial times. I am not going to repeat what the threats are. They have already been very well explained. These are very strong threats, difficult ones, but I am optimistic. I am very optimistic because we know that the world has also understood that they depend of the great forest, including the Amazon region, and that the future of the planet depends on the existence, the mere existence of those forests, and this benefits the population in isolation, which are the ones who want that territory that is so important for the rest of the world. It is a topic that is in people in everybody's mouth, and that's why we are pushing for the protection of these territories. We have gained a lot of strength, and there is a public interest, capabilities, conditions, legal, because we have achieved that protection. There is a lot of interest from the public sector, from the Peruvian sector to share, to work together, interest from international sectors, from other organizations to contribute. And I think this fits really well in corporate change, what is being mentioned in the commitments that Peru, Norway, and many other countries have assumed in the recent COP. I'm not going to talk that much. I'd like to just end by saying that we have an important alliance of different indigenous organizations, NGOs, different other factors and experts as well. Brazil and Peru, international organizations, international community, an alliance in which there is a lot of willingness to work together. And from the FN, we are committed to continue working together. We will look for support for a program. As my colleague has mentioned, my colleague Anders, of sustainable management of these corridors, and we will also work with the political piece to try and get some support of our idea. We will support our counterparts in their work, and next year I hope to see great advancement in order to define this program, this proposal in detail, and to look for its financing. Thank you very much. Thank you, Thomas. Thank you. Big round of applause for Thomas, please. To continue, Elena Lareira, she will also give some words. She is from CTI from Brazil. Hello, my friends. Good morning, good afternoon. I'm going to be quite brief. You're all sort of dispersed, hungry, tired. I'm not going to take that long. My name is Elena Lateres. I'm the coordinator of NGO from Indigenous Work in Brazil. About 20 years ago, we have been working with indigenous population from Javari in Brazil. It is the second biggest ethnic group of indigenous population, and we're the largest number of peoples in voluntary isolation live. About 15 years ago, CTI started supporting the indigenous population in Peru for the recognition of indigenous population in voluntary isolation that we share in the border of our countries. We have a difficult political moment or times in Brazil, as many of you know, but indigenous population in the Brazilian and Peruvian border have been recognized many years ago by the Brazilian government. So I hope that this important document, that this report that we are presenting here can make the Peruvian government to protect the population from the Yavari-Tapiche corridor, because as CTI, we are available to collaborate with you in this process of consolidation. Thank you very much.
Yo trabajo en IDL, coordinamos varios procesos con ORPIO. Y la verdad es
Thank
que
you
los
very
pueblos
much,
indígenas
Elena
en aislamiento
Ladeira.
voluntario están en
Well,
una
and to
situación de
close,
absoluta indefensión.
we have our
Según
last
escucha, yo con todo
panelist.
respeto a los
Is he
funcionarios del
here?
Estado, uno parece que
Yes,
vive en
let's
otro
call Juan
Y doy
Carlos
cuatro casos muy
Ruiz
concretos.
Moyena
Concesiones
from the
forestales. Uno
legal
mira el
defense
artículo
system, my
quinto
great
de
friend,
la disposición
Mr.
quinta
Moyena.
final de la
Thank
ley
you.
forestal y dice claramente no se puede entregar ningún tipo de concesiones sobre territorios donde está pendiente. Y sin
Good
embargo, se
afternoon
permite.
with all of you.
Seamos sinceros.
We are
Segundo
saying because we
ejemplo,
want the
la
book, right?
zonificación
But
de
I'm
Sierra
going to be
Divisor.
very honest. I
Permiten
work with
hacer actividades
IDL, we
tácticas
coordinate
territorial
many
de Piazza.
processes with ORPIO.
Tercer
And to
ejemplo,
be honest, the people,
lote 88.
the people
No se
in
puede hacer actividad
isolation,
extractiva en
voluntary
territorios de Piazza.
isolation,
Sin embargo,
are
lo permitió.
just completely
Sin embargo,
alone.
este
I
ministerio,
think that
yo
they
confío mucho en
live,
Gisela Ortiz,
I think
quiero que
that
haga
the
un
rest
cambio
of
de
the
timón,
people
pero este
here are
ministerio
in
dio
another
lugar a
world. Let's just
dio
look
lugar
at
para
the
que se haga
fifth
exploración
article
en la ampliación del lote
of the
88.
forestry law. It
Jurídicamente,
says that you
la vida es el
cannot
valor
give
principal.
any type of concession
artículo
on
uno.
territory that it's pending of
La persona
becoming
humana es
a
el bien
reservation or not.
supremo del
And
Estado. No
even
dice la
then, it's
inversión
allowed. Second
privada
example,
es el fin
the
supremo de la
zoning
sociedad.
of
Todavía no lo
Sierra
es.
Divisor. You
Y sin
can
embargo,
have
lote 88
extractive activity in Piazzi
se permitió,
territory.
se dio
Third example,
luz verde.
lot 88. You cannot have
Cuarto
any
ejemplo.
extractive
Estamos esperando buen tiempo que se
activities
creen
in
las
Piazzi
reservas.
territory, and it was
O sea, ya ha pasado
allowed.
mucho tiempo.
And so this ministry,
Hay una
and
situación
I
de
trust
amenaza cierta
that
e
Gisela Ortiz is
inminente
gonna do it. But
por
this
Piazza.
ministry
O
gave
sea,
the green
¿cuándo es
light
la
for
ley
exploration to
de
be
Piazza?
carried out in
2006.
lot 88.
Reglamento 2007.
By law,
ha
life
pasado?
is
Ahora
the
no se
most
crean las reservas.
important
Ya han dado mil
thing
pretextos.
in our constitution.
Esa situación
It doesn't
es
say
dramática.
private
¿Por qué?
investment.
Se ha dicho.
It doesn't
Los
say
pueblos
private
indígenas en
investment
el
is the most
voluntario
important thing to the
tienen
state.
una extremada
But lot
vulnerabilidad.
88,
Primero,
nevertheless, was
este,
allowed. They gave it the green light.
inmunológica. Lo ha dicho muy bien
Fourth
Beatriz,
example,
conoce tan bien
we've
el tema.
been waiting
Está
for these
preparada para el
reservations to be
proceso.
created. It's been
Extremada
so
vulnerabilidad ambiental
long.
depende
There is
mucho
a
de su territorio. Tú
situation
alteras algo
of
y los matas, y social.
certain threats
A pesar
of
de esa
certainty.
situación, seguimos esperando la
The
creación
law
de
for the
reservas.
Piazzi started in
Yo podría hablar de muchas
2006,
cosas,
the
pero
ruling in
quiero
2007.
centrarme
How
en
much
esto que es
time
lo
has
que
it passed? And the reservation
Beatriz ha
hasn't
pedido.
been created. So many
Y es-
pretexts as well.
tiene fundamento
That situation
constitucional
is dramatic
esta-
because indigenous
este corredor
population
territorial. Sí.
in voluntary isolation are
Y eso me
extremely
lleva a cuál es el
vulnerable.
rol
First
del
of all,
en la Constitución,
because
el rol
the
del
immunology
Estado es un rol
Beatriz
garante.
mentioned
Es decir,
really
el rol del
well,
Estado es
but they're not prepared for
garantizar los derechos.
contact. Environmental
No es
peace,
el
they
Estado del siglo
depend on the
XVIII, el
territory.
árbitro
If
que
you
impone el
alter
costado,
something, you
no
can
nada.
kill them.
Jueguen, todos somos
In
iguales,
spite of that
no me meto.
situation, we're still waiting for the
El
creation
Estado que está en la
of
Constitución, el artículo
reservations.
43
I
del
could
Estado
speak
social.
of so many
El Estado
things,
social
but
tiene
I
una
want to
función de
talk mainly
garantizar
about
los
this thing, which
derechos.
is what
Cuando hay un
Beatriz
grupo
asked
social
me
que
about,
tiene una
to
extremada
speak about.
vulnerabilidad, tiene que entrar a
There
protegerlo.
is constitutional value
Lo que
here.
plantea,
Does the law
Beatriz
protect this corridor?
es
Yes.
un
And what is the
corredor que
role
busca
of the
optimizar la
government?
protección de qué? De derechos.
In the Constitution,
Derecho a la propiedad, de eso se habla poco. Ustedes también tienen
the
derecho a la
state is
propiedad. Hay toda
supposed
una
to
discusión, hay un artículo de
guarantee
Marisa
the
Quispe,
rights
donde yo trabajo.
of everybody else. It's
Primero,
not a
propiedad.
state from the
Segundo,
18th century that
autodeterminación.
was more like a
Perico,
referee to say we
Pedro
are all the
Barcello decía,
same and I'm not
la
going to do anything.
autodeterminación territorial, la proyección de la autodeterminación sobre el
The
territorio.
state in the Constitution in
Derecho a la
Article
vida.
43, it's a social
Derecho a
one,
la salud, derecho al medio
and
ambiente. Este
they,
corredor vial busca
the state has to
concretar
guarantee the rights.
derechos.
And when there is a social group that is
Es una
extremely
propuesta
vulnerable,
para
it has to go in
optimizar
and
derechos.
protect
Pero la
it.
gran pregunta es, ¿cuál es el rol del Estado?
What Beatrice is pushing for
El
is a
Estado,
corridor that pushes to
si uno mira la
optimize
Convención Americana,
the
tiene
protection
básicamente dos
of
obligaciones.
the
Primero,
rights,
un
the
funcionario del
protection
Estado
of
puede violar
the
derechos.
land, of property.
Segundo, garantizar que ni un particular
First,
lo haga.
property.
Se llama la obligación
Second,
de garantizar
self-determination.
los derechos.
Perico, Pedro
Cuando hay un
Garcia, I was
particular
done a
que viola derechos, el
self-determination,
Estado
the
tiene cuatro
the
responsabilidades.
projection of
Investigar.
self-determination over the territory. What else? The
Prevenir
right
las
to
violaciones,
life,
sancionarlas y
health,
repararlas.
environment.
Lo que
So,
plantea el corredor es
we
una
have these concrete rights
una
to make.
propuesta
It's
que
a
busca,
proposal
¿no es
to
cierto?,
optimize
prevenir las
rights. But the
violaciones.
great big
Entonces,
question
tiene
is,
que
what is the
prevenir las
government's role?
violaciones. No puede esperar hasta que los días hayan sido, ¿no es cierto?
The government, if you look at the American Convention, has got two obligations.
Una cosa que se llama la doctrina del riesgo previsible.
No one from the government can avoid the rights. They have to guarantee them. So no private institution can go against people's rights. When there is a private that violates the rights, the government has to investigate, prevent, repair. What the corridor is putting forward is a proposal that looks into preventing the violation, because you cannot wait until the PIASI have been, I don't know, have died. In the system, we have this risk. If I see as a state, I see that a group is being threatened, that the rights are being threatened, and I know the situation, I can do something, and I don't do anything, that threat is being placed on me, because I didn't do anything. The main sentencing from the Galvez case, and this is what the corridor is trying to do, trying to protect rights. Now, it's also been said, I remember that once I was in Congress, I'm not going to say the name, but the responsible from that, I said, look, you have allowed for these concessions to happen in PIASI territory. And she said, hey, no, but there is other type of safety. And I said, no. And she said, okay, you're right. When those concessions end, we're not going to renovate that, but that's in 15, 20 years. There will not be any more PIASI. There are two big situations here. Because of the Madre de Dios reservation, you cannot touch those contracts or those concessions because they are contract. We have to wait for them to end. That's something that has been said. There are two things to be said. The fundamental rights have limits against contracts. I can celebrate a contract with anybody, but I cannot go against people's rights. If I can prove that I am going against people's rights, you can cancel a contract. The constitutional jury said something about this. Fundamental rights are not of free disposition. That's one. And two, here we are talking about the freedom of business. That is important. Article 59. The government promotes the creation of this, and we can respect this. But that's that. They don't read anything else. They don't talk about anything else. Article 59, the health, moral, etc. There are limits. They put limits to these contracts that have these forestry concessions. The area 53. What were the lawyers from the what were the attorneys saying from this company? Saying, hey, I was here first. And the court said, no, it's not who was there first or who was there before. It's the importance of the people. So much so that the constitutional jury suspended the exploitation of Lot 63. It suspended it until they could not demonstrate that the exploitation, that the exploration, the oil exploration, would not put in danger the area. And you will see that in the master plan. They suspended a project, an large extractive project. Why? Because it would put in danger the environment. It's the same with your life. Many of these conflicts can summarize in this: life, integrity, freedom. The first option of law is to try and put together both rights. Let's try to work together. Let's see if we can make them both compatible. Sometimes it is possible. There's a famous case, the La Pizza Street, the ones living on the top floor said, hey, I want to sleep. the ones working down there, they said, hey, we have the right to work. And the court said, okay, at 1 o'clock, you have to close all the pizzerias. So the pizzeria owner versus the right that people had to rest. And when that is not possible, as it's happening in Law 88, what needs to happen? We have to work on protecting what is most important. The most important thing is life, health, well-being, and lawyers know that very well. So here, and that is from the dramatic case of Law 88. You have camisea, 1.2 of the GDP, and on the other hand, you've got life, the lives of the Nawananti. You can sometimes work together. There are some activities that can be carried out together. But is it possible in this case? 18 wells, ducts, everything that's going to happen. You're going to alter all the area when it's not possible to harmonize, then you have to protect what's the most important thing. In this case, it's not what can be generated from that. What's most important here is life. Even if these are people that the political power makes or turns invisible. I think that this proposal tries to protect the rights. That's one. Number two, I think this reminds the state its role. This is not a liberal state that doesn't get involved in anything. We are in a social state where the state has to go and protect those whom are being excluded. They cannot cross their hands, and this measure puts everything in paper. I think that today the Piazzi are in a vulnerable situation. How come after this agreement the main mining projects have no consultancy process? Why is it that you give the communities 2 sheets of paper so that they say if they think it's okay or not? If other groups of people feel as though they're being displaced, imagine what the Piazzi can feel. I think that Ms. Ortiz is trying to help them out, is trying to change gears, but let's not look the other way around. There is a threat. The threat is there. And the Ministry of Culture was just pushing paperwork and convalidated everything that was going on. I hope that these new times bring an improvement for the Piazzi. Thank you very much. And Beatriz, I congratulate you. And congratulations to you all for this proposal. Thank you, Doctor. Thank you very much. This is the last piece of the event. And please, if I can ask for all the representatives from ORPIO, ORAU, and UNIVAJA to please approach the front of the floor so that we can take the final picture, and in that case close this important event. And a big round of applause to you all for assisting in a virtual manner and here sitting for more than 3.5 hours. Thank you very much for your effort and consideration. Thank you very much.